the wide had viewed the petition. Recently, the petition has received more attention, so let me give you an update. As of today, there have been 64,800 views, an increase of 42% in a little over 2 months. Let's compare those numbers to Solvang USA's Instagram page. That site has 54,500 followers. Or compare it to Solvang's Facebook site, where we find 2,700 likes and 3,800 following. Tourists visit Solvang from everywhere in the U.S. Nearly 65,000 people have looked at this petition, which may influence their decision to visit Solvang. Think hard about what this approval of this project would mean for the reputation of this city council, and this staff, and think even more hard about the potential negative impact on tourism. Let me leave you with this, a repeat of a comment a change.org visitor left at the petition in April. Dear Solvang, don't become Woodland Hills. With love from Woodland Hills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephen Martin.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Stephen Martin. I live at 698 Hillside Drive, and I'd like to start just by thanking the men and women who are bravely fighting the fire up here on Figueroa Mountain and trying to protect our dwellings and our environment as best as they can. It's a horrible thing that they have to go to do, but we hope that they're successful without injury. Speaking of the fire department, I think most of you by now have seen the letter that has been sent from the Mission Oaks Homeowners Association to our local county fire department. If not, I strongly urge you to read that letter. The development at Site C has created a hazard to public health and safety by failing to provide access to the dwellings that they are proposing. In the event of fire or flooding or earthquake or other natural disasters or problems. Specifically, the development calls for a road of over 500 feet plus 2 driveways accessing the dwellings. Per the Department of Fire Department regulations for access, a turnout is required on the road, and there is none proposed. In addition, an additional 4 feet of width on the driveway is required and is not proposed. The owner of the development, or proposed development, wants to have a waiver of parking requirements down to 1.54 parking spaces per dwelling. In fact, that's about 0.8 below the statistical average for numbers of vehicles per dwelling. And as a result of this, the extra 75 or 80 cars that is going to, that are going to need to be parked will result in illegal parking, I'm sure. So the main thing we have to look at here is that we've got the whole development proposed to be accessed by a dead-end road of over 500 feet, restricting fire department access, restricting people getting out in the event of an emergency. In addition, you have Old Mission Drive, which is a dead-end road again that has dozens of homes and the recent 16 apartment dwellings added, 2 driveways from the shopping center, trucks that are illegally parking trying to get into the loading basins at the shopping center. So in the event of an emergency, the illegal parking, the dwellings evacuating or needing to get out, the dead-end aspect of both the access to this proposed development, the 84 units in Mission Oaks, are easily going to cause a danger to the public health and welfare. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Appreciate it. Craig Kent.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Thank you for giving me this time to speak. My concern principally with, and specifically with Site C and the Wildwood project, is the impacts of the development traffic on the intersection of Old Mission Drive and Alamo Pintado Road. This is already a heavily used intersection. Some informal community traffic counts have revealed that it's at times operates at or very near capacity. We have assessed preliminarily some average pedestrian crossings and have determined that a single pedestrian crossing the intersection can reduce the traffic volume by as much as 50 or more % because it takes about 20 to 30 seconds to cross Alamo Pintado Road. And we have vehicles that are crossing at the rate of about 10 vehicles per minute. I think I said second, I meant minute. And so a half a minute reduction is a 50% reduction in the 10 cars that are averaging at the peak traffic hours. The concern is, of course, emergency vehicle access to the hospital for emergency room, also emergency vehicle service to residents and communities north of that intersection, because all of the emergency service vehicles come from south of that intersection. There are times where that intersection backs up in both directions between Old Mission Drive and Highway 246. And then there are people who will go into the intersection because they don't want to lose their turning, and then the traffic becomes gridlocked. That doesn't last for a long time, but it does happen. And so the concern here is that the Wildwood development adding more pedestrian traffic, and one of their proposals is to, or one of their advantages they claim is that they're going to add more pedestrian traffic because of the walking vicinity of the 2 shopping centers, will further reduce at peak hours the amount of vehicles that can go through that intersection, and that has a safety impact on the emergency vehicles. What's missing is a level service of a baseline analysis of that intersection that does not exist at this time in all the documents that we've looked at, and that needs to be performed before an assessment is done of what impacts this development will have on that intersection. So I urge the city to please get a level of service analysis done on this intersection so that we know and can do mitigation measures ahead of time rather than post facto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Kent Lockhart.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you very much. My name is Kent Lockhart. I live on Hillside Drive in Solvang. I retired about 3 years ago, moved up here to Solvang. It's been a great place to live. And prior to that, I worked for a company down in Los Angeles that had theme parks, movies, entertainment, that type of thing. I've had a number of years, 27 years with that organization, working with them in different capacities, where I got to know and understand their philosophy of how they did business, as well as how they made decisions. That company made decisions by using a criteria, 4-point criteria. They called them the 4 keys: safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency. That's how they made the decisions. And if it didn't pass the first question, is it safe? They didn't do it, no matter how much money they could make, no matter how much they wanted to do the project, no how glamorous it might be. If it didn't meet the criteria of safety, they didn't do it. You've just heard several speakers talk about the dilemmas of safety involved with the expansion of the builder's remedy and the extra capacity that that would create on that intersection. I've spoken before about the draw on that intersection already, where so many of the services that Solvang residents and visitors, tourists, rely on are centralized at that one place. I consider that, from my experience with my prior employee, to be a pinch point. I also consider it to be a liability and a hazard and a risk for us to continue to build in that area when it doesn't have the capability to be able to handle catastrophic situations that could occur. Now, we can all feel as though catastrophic situations don't occur very often, but we got a fire going on right now, okay? We had an entire highway, okay, out of order, causing additional traffic. And we all know that there's a history right now that so many people are experiencing catastrophic situations with earthquake and flooding and active shooters. Don't let that intersection become a safety issue and a dilemma for Solvang and a problem for our future in regards to how people remember us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Kent Lockhart? Oh, sorry, that's what I just did. My apologies. Al Cortese. No, you can't take Al's spot. Al?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Good evening. I'm Al Cortese of Solvang, a 10-year resident. Tonight, I'd like to reiterate the position of the 17 owners in common of a portion of the Site C development that is subject to the easement referenced by Mr. Beebe earlier, of a portion of the Site C property. And the developer proposes to take that 60-foot wide strip on which he has an easement for his exclusive use as the only in and out access road for the property, and to burden that further that is to burden the cul-de-sac with 28 additional parking spaces. It's our position that the development application is void according to the California Code, and therefore the city, by following the law, the code, can take back control of development. In fact, city staff should not even be processing the application under the Builder's Remedy Law, because the application is void and of no effect and did not vest any rights in the developer. That position was clearly stated in our council's letter to the city attorney dated March 22, 2024, and in a follow-up email dated April 1, including the letter to the mayor, planning manager, and city manager, copying the developer and city attorney. The very Builder's Remedy Law, and this is why I want to make it Mr. Beebe's presentation a little more specific on the law. The very Builder's Remedy Law on which developer relies requires, I quote, consent from the property owner to submit the application. And the property owner affidavit requires, quote, the owner of each property involved to provide their signature acknowledging that, quote, the application is being filed with their knowledge, that is, the knowledge of all of the owners. Further, the property owner affidavit states if the property is owned by more than one individual, signatures are required of all owners. The developer did not have the consent of the co-owners of the common property that he seeks to take for a roadway and parking, and he failed to obtain their signatures on the application. There's been no decision or formal response from city staff, and I'm concerned that further delay is not fair to either side. The developer is spending many days and dollars compiling the information and studies necessary to complete. May I have another minute, half a second?
30 seconds.
To void the information necessary to complete his void application. And we, as owners of the common property, are concerned that the developer's application may be declared complete before any decision is rendered, which might require emergency legal action. Therefore, please let us know when we might expect a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cortese. Do we have anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on a non-agenda item or a consent item? I don't see anybody on Zoom that has a hand raised. Okay, so we'll take it back to the council and the city manager's report. Mr. Murphy, you're on, please.
I'm on. So there was a comment about the fire. I received an email from the county earlier today, and they are informing us and asked us to spread the word to remind everybody that information about the fire and signing up for notifications can be found on readysbc, short for Santa Barbara County.org. And if people are having trouble registering for the alerts, there are two ways you can get assistance. One is to call the county call center. Say that 3 times fast. And a person will help register you for alerts. That number is area code 833-688-5551. Again, 833-688-5551. The call center is open today until like right now, 7 p.m. It will probably be open tomorrow. They make that decision on a regular basis based on the severity of the fire. I don't see it not being open tomorrow morning. So obviously, if you're having trouble registering, to call tomorrow until you can sign up and learn about resources for people that are impacted by the evacuation warning. The second opportunity or option for people that cannot sign up online to fill out a paper form to register for alerts. 3rd District Solvang Supervisor Joan Hartman's office has paper forms as well as the Solvang library, and you can return them to the district office via the mail slot next to the Solvang library. So that's, they're asking for everybody to understand that. Again, the readysbc.org. There's information there about large animal evacuation assistance and other assistance for people that are impacted by the fire. Although it is not currently threatening the city of Solvang, these are our neighbors, so we are there to help. The Solvang Veterans Hall is open as an emergency evacuation shelter. Wanted to change gears for a moment, and we had talked about the Solvang Business Talks. It was presided by our planning manager, Rafael Castillo, and our marketing and events coordinator, Candace Libera, and it was well attended. There currently is a survey out for sign ordinance for business owners that have concerns or recommendations regarding the sign ordinance currently in place and what changes they'd like to see. And also a special events survey asking local businesses what impact the various special events have on their business. Wanted to share also that we current plans to have the Solvang State of the City address, the State of the City on September 27th. And the mayor and I are going to arm wrestle over who gets to present that. Coming attractions on the city council meeting at the next one, there will be a marketing and tourism quarterly update. We also have a presentation by Santa Barbara County Youth Poet Laureate Jasmine Guerrero. And we'll take a brief moment to talk about her title and the award I guess she won for that. August 12th, the subsequent council meeting
there will be a discussion and presentation on the Alamo Pintado Bridge that will be under construction here in the next couple of years, so that will be good information for people to know about. Frontier Communications will be here on August 26th to talk about the internet improvements to our community. And after that, on September 9th, there will be a PERS liability discussion for the county. Not everybody knows, but there's an unfunded liability that we have with PERS, and it's a pretty large number, but there are ways to deal with that. So a couple of you on the ad hoc committee saw some of that information. I've asked Julio to come and present that to the entire council. So that's coming attractions. And then on September 23rd, Dave Molinex from Cal Cities will be here to talk about a legislative update, things on the ballot, and what's current League of Cities' position are on various issues. And that's all I have for now.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy?
Mr. Murphy, would you expand a little bit about Red Cross at the Vets Center? Let others know about that.
So yeah, they're mobilized. They opened it yesterday for people that were impacted, evacuees of the area. The fire is currently burning. And my understanding, we had one person there this morning, but as of later this afternoon, there is nobody there. But it is open and continues to be open for anybody who needs those services.
A couple more things with regard to that. You and I were just on a meeting at 4 o'clock with a legislative update to the fire. Legislative, is that a good word?
Yeah, that's what they call it, yeah.
Yeah. There was an update of what's going on in the fire, and if you're not aware, the fire has hit the top part of Sedgwick Reserve. It is approaching Woodstock, which affects some people we know. And it is so far not, what is it, 8% contained?
8% is what they said. That's over 20,000 acres now.
It's huge. This is something to be very, very careful of, folks. If there's anything we can do to help, let us know. But as Randy said, if you're anybody that you know in the area that's been evacuated, can go to the Vets Hall and get some help. Also, I'd like to tell you that I got a call from Congressman Salud Carbajal, and he specifically told me that if we, the city, need any help from the feds, to get hold of him, and he will do what he can do to support us. And I know it's not just us. I talked to Mayor King in Buellton, and Dave said that Salud talked to him as well. So I know he's going around and making sure that everybody's aware that there is federal help for anything that comes out of this fire. So we'll move on with that.
I have a question. As Solvang so far is not affected, obviously the valley is, and out towards San Lorenzo Seminary and those areas north of there are, but why would Salud be interested in offering Solvang assistance when it's entirely a county issue?
I can't answer that.
If I can
Please do.
jump in, I think we can have, staff can help you address that question outside of the meeting, but I just want to not go back and forth too long on something that's not on the agenda.
Got it,
Thank you.
thanks, yeah, you're right.
I did want to jump in and mention the Solvang State of the City. Buellton's is later this week. Just learned about it over the weekend.
Yeah.
The mayor and I are attending. It's on Thursday at 9:30, I believe. It's a breakfast. So if anybody on the council wants to attend that, let me know and we'll secure a ticket for you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so do we have any requests from council members? Anything going on you want to talk about?
4th of July was a nice event. Requests, no. I'll leave comments for later.
Okay. Anybody else? No? All right, then let's move on to consent items. If you would introduce that for the record, please, Ms. Santa
We've
Maria.
got a big agenda tonight.
Consent is for routine administrative city matters and is approved with one motion. These items are discussed only on request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak during the public communications portion of this agenda.
Okay, so does anybody on the council want to pull anything on the consent agenda?
No.
No? Okay, then may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona absent, Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes?
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, let's move to item 7, please, the public hearings. Before we open up public hearings, can I get a introduction to this, please?
Public hearing to consider adoption of resolution number 241253, certifying the final environmental impact report, adopting findings of fact pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, adopting a mitigation and monitoring and reporting program, and adopting a statement of overriding considerations for the Solvang 2045 general plan consisting of the following elements: land use, community design, economic development, mobility, environment and sustainability, safety and public facilities, services and infrastructure. SCH number 202-306-0448, and adopting resolution number 241254, adopting the City of Solvang 2045 general plan consisting of the following elements: land use, community design, economic development, mobility, environment and sustainability, safety and public facilities, services and infrastructure.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So before you this evening is our, hopefully, adoption hearing for the 2045 general plan, as well as the final adoption and certification of the final EIR and adoption of statement of overriding considerations. So I'm going to take over a brief overview of the process of this general plan update, which began in 2021. City Council authorized funding to update the general plan. In October 2021, the contract was approved. In December of 2021, we did do a kickoff meeting. Throughout 2022, we included a website update. We had marketing, public engagement, workshops, surveys. We formed a GPAC committee, as well as we drafted elements for the review. In 2023, the housing element review and approval was completed, and that was done under a separate process. In 2024, the draft environmental review for the public was released, and that was approximately in February. In April of that, and the 2024 in June, this document went before the Planning Commission, and now we are here at the City Council meeting. So the general plan consists of elements that are required by state law. The first one is the land use element, and that's covered under Chapter 2, land use. Second one is circulation, and that's covered under mobility, or Chapter 5. The housing element, which I mentioned was previously approved. Conservation and open space have been combined into what's called an environmental and sustainability chapter. Noise and safety have also been combined into a safety chapter. And then environmental justice, that's a new requirement from the state of California legislature that came out a couple years ago. However, the city of Solvang is not required to have such a chapter. We do include some optional elements, as any jurisdiction is allowed to have optional elements as part of their general plan. The first one is community design. Second one is economic development. And the third one is public facility services and infrastructure. So as a reminder, our general plan is a policy document. It basically lays out future growth, development, and redevelopment of our community at this point, over the next 20 plus years. So as a policy document, sometimes it changes, sometimes it could be amended, so it's not set in stone. So that's just want to keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. So right now I'm going to take you over a very brief overview of each element, and then from there I'm going to take it, our planning consultant is going to take over the presentation from the podium in regards to the other elements, as she was more heavily involved in this work effort. As you know, again, it did stretch almost 4 years, and I've only been here for 10 months at least. So it's best that institutional knowledge give this presentation. But I first do want to introduce to you the land use element, which is basically the core. We have two core elements in this general plan, and that I consider the land use element. Excuse me, there are three core ones: land use, community character, and mobility are the three cores. So land use is, I'm going to briefly touch on this, and this was in your packets. So we do have a land use element map. This basically sets the stage up for zoning and our future zoning map and future zoning efforts. As you can see, that is a pretty big change from the map that's on the wall. because it actually conforms to colors that are used by our industry standards. It's one of those things where it's kind of best to follow the standards simply because most people know a yellow means residential and a red means commercial. Coming in as a professional for almost 20 years, I couldn't tell you what a blue meant because in my mind it meant public facilities. And so when I saw a bunch of blue on the map, I scratched my head very often and then actually read the legend and said, oh, well, that makes sense, maybe. So we do have, again, it's color-coded legend there. And there are a list of land use element changes, specifically from the existing land use map. First off, we're eliminating the agriculture designation. So just what that means is it's just eliminating the agriculture land use. It doesn't necessarily mean that ag will disappear, but we are designating that to open space recreation designations. The Alisal Ranch is actually going to have its own standalone land use designation known as guest ranch designation. So again, that's to codify that the Alisal Ranch is special in its own nature as a working tourist ranch, but as a working ranch, number one, and second, as a tourist destination for hotel and lodging. The following ones are just smaller lot changes. The Curso lot is going from building from residential to professional office. This office was actually approved sometime, I want to say in the late 70s, early 80s as a dentist office. It remained as so, and it's not going away anytime soon. So just go ahead and make it what it is, a commercial land use. The Bratt property is office professional. It was never clearly delineated where that was on the map. We made sure we delineated it this time. Mission San Ynez, it's currently zoned agriculture, but it is not really ag in nature at this point. It is functions more as a quasi-public facility because it is a full functioning Catholic parish. So it does have masses and other church functions that go on throughout the week. It also functions as a state park and a National Place of Historic Registry. And with that, there's a lot of significant artifacts, archaeological artifacts that belong with that. So it's been split into an open space recreation category, particularly in the areas of the drop-off, and then public institution for the main parish offices, parking lots, et cetera. The Village Estate Specific Plan, for whatever reason, this was adopted back in 1991, and for whatever reason, I don't know, and I can't tell you why it was zoned, or its land use designation never matched its specific plan designations. It's known as SB2. We went ahead and made it match to be legal and consistent with state law. City-owned lots have been changed over in the TRC from designated TRC to public institution, as well as to give us more latitude. Site C Wildwood, which you heard comments from earlier this evening, it is proposed to be redesignated, half of it as to a higher density residential, and the other upper half portion of it, 2.5 acres, to a lower density residential. The old lumberyard site is actually proposed to be TRC zoned, or village commercial. Again, this is to provide more flexibility and options, particularly with a potential project that may be in the future of a mixed-use horizontal project. And then sites B and D, which have already been redesignated by this council, just solidifying those redesignations to high-density residential, as well as new policies. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Lori to take us out for the rest of this presentation.
Good evening. Lori Tamura, Planning Consultant. Going to continue with the presentation. At the Planning Commission, we did go through the exercise of designating or reviewing all of the different sites that were identified in that list. And there were particular project parcels that there was a potential for a conflict of interest between planning commissioners and where the site was located. So there were individual votes taken on particular sites, and the slide above reflects the site, the discussion, and then the motion and the final decision on each one of those sites. So as we finish our presentation here tonight, there will be a discussion about any city council members that might have a conflict of interest with any of the sites as we finish our presentation. So the next element is community design, and it is an optional element. It is one that we believe the city has a strong affinity for and would really want to continue that particular element. So if you can go to the next slide. It was important that we clarified where the village area design district was located, and then the mission design district, and then the residential neighborhoods outside of those districts. And there are policies and discussion with each one of those different areas. As you can see here, this is the updated version of the different district boundaries, with the yellow being the village area design district, and it pretty much corresponds to the TRC district. And then you also have the mission design district, which goes all the way down and includes Alamo Pintado commercial areas. The important thing with this particular illustration is that the city council the planning commission did change at their meeting one area of the village area design district, which is along Copenhagen Drive, that captured a couple of properties that previously had not been in the village district because they were designated DR20 in the previous general plan. And because of the way the DR designation is on those sites, they could potentially be visitors serving commercial site also, such as an Airbnb or visitors. And so the Planning Commission thought it was appropriate to include those in the village area district designation. So this is a recommendation that came from the Planning Commission. Go ahead. The next element is economic development. Again, this is an optional element, and we'll just move through these. There are a number of policies that were identified, particularly in regards to activities that serve the visiting public, diversity of commercial uses, providing jobs for the residents within, and encouraging, and this is probably the most important one, encouraging mixed-use commercial and residential uses in the core area. The important thing is that the idea of having a primary use of residential is something that we wanted to encourage in the TRC zone, particularly for the existing homes that are still within the TRC that people are obviously using as residential, but also to encourage particular buildings that might want to convert their second stories or third story lofts into some kind of residential use. So this is something that is in both the economic development policy document as well as the housing element. Mobility, that's our circulation element because it goes beyond just traffic, but includes bikeways and pedestrian. And if you can go on to the next slide. Obviously, it's talking about moving people safely through the city, encouraging alternative transportation, plans for EV and alternative energy sources, including hydrogen and other sources that are coming for the future, and pursuing grants and funding sources for improvements. The public facilities, services, and infrastructure, this is an optional element, but it's very important for the city of Solvang to include because it marries the issues of serving the infrastructure, the residential, all of the desires of the city with strong infrastructure improvements. Particularly with water and sewer, also coordinating with fire and sheriffs and schools and libraries, update the developer fees and user fees for these services, and then also pursuing grants and other funding sources for improvements. Environment and sustainability, this is an important element in reviewing projects in the future. If you can go to the next slide. We want to continue to maintain the public parks and open space that we do have within the city. We also want to coordinate with the County of Santa Barbara for surrounding land uses and open space. We want to protect the scenic views that are enjoyed by the residents and the many visitors that come to the city, and pursue grants and other funding sources for parks and open space improvements. Safety. This is an important element, and again, it also merges one of the other elements, which is noise, as a single document. And if you can move on. We want to coordinate and continue to update our emergency response plans and programs with both county fire and sheriffs and emergency services, maintain mutual aid agreements, be aware of existing natural hazards and for the existing and future projects, and apply provisions dealing with noise impacts during construction and traffic-related noise. And again, pursue grants and funding sources for updating our services for emergency. There are a number of other chapters that are part of the overall general plan. That includes the already adopted housing element, and there will be a glossary section and then administrative a section that talks about how you'd implement the different policies within the document. This whole effort did go through an environmental impact report. The draft EIR was circulated for public review between February and April of this year. We did receive 11 comment letters. The final EIR, which is the package that's before you tonight, included those comment letters, responses to the comment letters, and then an errata section that included how the responses to the comments changed sections of the EIR. So that whole package is part of the action tonight. Also, you have the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan. This is an important document because it guides the staff and the city council on how to implement the recommended mitigation measures, not only on development projects as they come forward, but also as how they apply to things like the improvements to the sewer, improvements to water, improvements to roads, and how do you deal with the mitigations. And then finally, there's a statement of overriding consideration and findings. If you can go to the next slide. The reason that you need to have a statement of overriding consideration is that there were some identified impacts that cannot be mitigated to its fullest extent. And those mitigation or those impacts related to air quality during construction, cultural resources during construction, noise during construction, and then transportation vehicle miles traveled throughout the city and both coming and going. Each one of those had identified mitigation measures, but the mitigation measures did not reduce the impact to less than significant. And so a statement of overriding considerations is part of your package to consider these impacts as they relate to the general plan and adopt that statement as part of your final action. So the Planning Commission's recommendation at their June 3rd meeting was to make the changes that were identified, particularly in the village area design district. There were a couple of editorial comments that were in the document itself that we have made, responded to and added. And then those individual votes were provided in their resolution for the ones that they might have had a conflict of interest. And then they made a recommendation overall to recommend to you adoption of the 2024 general plan and the related final EIR document. I think that's, so, are you going to go ahead? Sorry, change.
Well, thank you, Lori. And I just want to express, first off, Lori, my gratitude for helping to close out or hoping to get this project to the finish line. Lori, as if you may or may not know, she's been here as a part of this project from the beginning and went through just a very long process. So again, I appreciate that. And also Brent Gibbons from my Terra Hunter, she's also here in person as well, who was on the project team. We do have Rincon Associates also on Zoom. So our entire project team is here. With tremendous effort, and this is a community-led effort. But unfortunately, with general plans, it can go one of two ways. They can either sit on the shelf, and you've expended almost well over $500,000 to let it sit, or you actually do something with it. And so the previous documents have sort of remained on that shelf, and it's my intention to not have it sit on the shelf, but actually implement the policies and implementation measures that have been worked on very hard and have been reviewed by a lot of our constituents, particularly our GPAC. So because of that, there are several staff work efforts ahead to implement the policies and goals and implementation measures in this general plan. The first one being the zoning ordinance, zoning map amendments, and that's going to fall in line to your adopted council goals of streamlining and making things easier to understand and making things easier to read. That's on the docket. Went to the Planning Commission this past a week ago. We got some really good feedback. It'll go to the DRC next week for a certain section of it that includes first off a preliminary standard of objective design standards for both the village as well as the Mission Design District. The second one is housing element implementation. Even though we did have an adopting housing element, and it did take us a while to get there, the state is going to continuously chase our tail if we don't implement what's in it. And so that is my aim, and there's a lovely appendix in the back to tell us what we need to do and when we need to get done by. And so Mintier Harnish will actually be continuing to work with myself and the rest of the city staff to get that implemented, and hopefully the good bulk of it will be implemented within the next year. Revisions for consistency with state laws. As you know, state legislature likes to tinker with a lot of planning and zoning laws, particularly when it comes to housing. That's why this document can't just sit on a shelf. It needs to evolve. And then finally, revising the sign ordinance, which is we're going to bring something to you hopefully in September to review the ordinance. We have a survey out, and then other implementation measures directed by the council. All this is born from this document. These are work efforts that are beginning now, that are going to begin in the near future, and as sort of this reminder that what you adopt tonight doesn't sit in stone. It's not frozen in time of 2024. It could be amended 4 times a year. That's all we got. Sorry, only 4. But it can be amended. Land use designations can change. Policies can change. Those things can change if a proper review is done and goes through the proper vetting process, goes through the public hearing process. This is a living, breathing document. And so it's up for us as city staff to implement the vision that you as the council have approved. And more importantly, that the GPAC has really done their homework and effort to make this document work in terms of development and growth and the vision for our community for the next 20 plus years. So with that being said, the Planning Commission is recommending adoption of City Council Resolution number 24-1253, certification of the final environmental impact report, adoption of findings of the mitigation monitoring plan, and statement overriding considerations. And finally, adoption of City Council Resolution number 24-1254, amending the City of Solvang 2045 general plan with elements. And with that, I'll open up to questions from the council.
You hit on 2 of the most important things, Ralph. The fact that it's as big as a Ron Chernow novel, and things can change 4 times a year, and it's important for the residents to know that it is not set in stone. It's a guideline, and so that's good to let people know. Also, I would urge residents to look into the housing elements and see what we're up against as a council and a city when fighting Sacramento. But I appreciate the work the Planning Commission's done on this and the work that all of you've done on this. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to also thank everybody that took the time to make comments, and particularly thank you to everybody on the GPAC that review previous policy, made suggestions, corrections, and really took the time to go over tiny details that were super important for consultancy in order to help us with this project successfully. So thank you so much. I very much look forward to using it as a guide for, implementing and coming up with policy to benefit our city. So thanks again.
I have one for you, Raphael. You were talking about in the zoning changes, and we had a few people talking about Site C. You mentioned that the zoning changes would change the 2 parcels in Site C to a high density and an R20, a DR20. Did I get the right number in there? So there's 2 different zoning I don't know what you want to call them, zoning rules. And the question then becomes, if those two exist that way, if we change that, first off, one, can we change it without the owner's permission? And two, if we change it, doesn't that kind of change the whole plan for the building on that Site C?
So I'll take your question in two parts. It's a land use designation, not zone. So the land use designation proposal this evening for Site C is directly from the council, which was to split the zone, the lower half to be
Dave's recommendation.
2.5 acres to high-density residential uses.
Right.
And then the upper 2.5 acres to low-density residential uses. So that's what you're seeing in the map. Does that affect the Wildwood project that's currently in development review? No, does not. What it does is it helps to do the final piece of our housing certification puzzle, which is required of 3 site rezones. We've done sites B and D. This is the last rezone of Site C. Closes the door of the builder's remedy, at least for the time being.
I was trying. All right. Thank you, sir. If there's no other, do you have a question? Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Is that public comment too?
Well, we're going to get there.
I guess if we would, can you go back to the map that you showed on my page is 285 for land use designation changes? Thank you. The blue that you have would be on this map here. I don't know how this is different. There's just, so this would work too. It's a little blow up of it. On Alsall Road, just south of Mission Drive, you've got the large blue area there and a smaller blue area. Is that the parking lot?
Yes, that's correct. Those are our parking lots.
And you want to zone that's the Mission Church grounds?
Correct. It's the existing parking lots and driveways of Mission San Ynez.
Why would you use that for public institutional?
Again, it is the rationale there is it is a quasi-public meeting facility for all intents and purposes, a church. Has no commercial value, and it basically also functions as a state park. They do tours. It's a tourist destination, but its primary function is an institutional facility, which is owned by the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. The Catholic Church.
Your facts are not complete or correct, and if my understanding, the state park is actually the grist mill property, not the mission itself. You're talking 2 separate parcels, is my understanding, if that's correct. And to call it any kind of public use on private land just doesn't make sense to me. I wouldn't offer the same designation to the Bethania Church as a public gathering space. And I don't see why you're trying to employ that here.
Well, I guess you have the same issue with the hospital then, because the hospital is a private entity in its own. It's public now, and it's proposed to maintain that public designation.
We could do that too, but I'm just saying that it's not intended to be a public entity or for public use. We're there at their convenience or their pleasure, not by right.
I would disagree. And again, we can agree to disagree simply because a church is a quasi-public function, no matter whether a Catholic church or any other type of church facility. It is a community facility. Sometimes it could function as a warming shelter. It could function based on the missions that the church's establishment for community gatherings. In some communities, the public institutional is known as public facilities, or in other instances, is known as PF or quasi-public. But they use the same designations. But ultimately, in the end, it sort of is that same function.
Well, you have it as the same designation as the parking lot, yet we don't have the designation of public service or public for Theater Fest, which also could be said as a public gathering place. So I'm thinking we're doing an overreach on this designation for the mission, and I would extend that also as it relates to open space and the balance of that property. I think it abuts the TRC, and I think it should be afforded the same designation.
May I ask, Councilmember Brown, what impact are you getting at here?
Well,
What are you seeing that there's a problem with, or what's your end result?
Yeah, I'm just-
that you're concerned with?
it's a long-term plan, and I don't want to handcuff the private landowner with such a designation.
May I clarify?
Designation doesn't hurt it.
May I clarify something? So,
Please.
land use designation is at 30,000 foot level, and so it is very broad. We're talking a land use designation this evening, not zoning. And the way the proposed zoning ordinance amendments that you'll get a preview at your next meeting, the public facility actually provides the most latitude of any zone that we're proposing at this point as a part of our rezone. So being designated a public facility provides you would provide it a lot more latitude in terms of what they can and cannot do on their property.
That
So-
sounds very counterintuitive to me.
It does, but again, you got to look at this as a very higher picture thing. This is the 50,000 foot level. Zoning brings it right back down to 10 to 20,000 with the nuts and bolts that are connected to it. This is merely a land use designation, and it's a very broad designation at that.
Okay.
Okay?
There's one, Mr. Clark had a comment.
All right.
did
In that case, let's declare that we are going to
Mayor?
have the public comment now. This is now a public hearing.
Yes, and if I could just make one note for you all, when you get back to discussion and you're ready to make motions on these, check in with me
Close.
because we'll need to walk through some specific order of operations because I do understand there are a few of you that have conflicts on particular land use designations. So just before you start making motions, look at me and I'll help you through.
I will turn to you first. Absolutely, lawyers. Okay, so let's open the public hearing and let's hear some public comment. I have a couple of requests for public comment, starting with Mr. Beebe. Why do we always start with Dennis?
I was always sitting in the front row in the classroom, too. Yes, Dennis Beebe, Solvang. I support your eventual adoption of both these resolutions, the general plan and the general plan EIR. It was the result of a collaborative effort of 15 volunteers as far as the GPAC is concerned. I was a member, two of you were members, and we worked long and hard, and most of the elements of the general plan are the result of consensus. Now, each meeting we had, and there were many, were scheduled and managed by the former city manager, but that turned leaderless. But no, we were with a leader. We had Lansing Duncan. I want to point out a member of the GPAC who was the most experienced planner of any of us put together. He has experience on the County Planning Commission, the Staninas Valley Community Plan GPAC, and the Solvang GPAC. Couldn't ask for more experience, and even though we never elected him, he was the leader. So I urge your adoption of the general plan for the next 20 years. It's not 25, right? And also the related EIR to the general plan. I also support your adoption of that resolution. There were many comments to it, but I want to point out two features of it. One was it looked at not implementing the general plan. It's required in an EIR to look at not doing the so-called project, and selected implementing the general plan as the preferred environmental alternative. Yep. Ta-da. And it looked at an option for Site C development. No development, development. It selected no development of Site C as the preferred environmental alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Craig Kent.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you once again for letting me speak. I'm a long-term homeowner and resident of Solvang. My comments are relative to the mobility and circulation transportation section of the draft EIR in particular. They augment my letter to you, which I hope you've had an opportunity to read, from July 5th, 2024. If you haven't read it, I hope you will read it. It also relates to a letter that I sent to the planning director relative to the EIR in June, I think it was. I forgot to write down the date, but addresses the similar topics. Of my concern is that the appendix for the transportation mobility section, Appendix G, I believe, has no information in it related to the traffic on any of the intersections of Alamo Pintado north of Highway 246. There are no references that I could find or anybody else could find to any traffic counts going back to through the reference material that we had access to inform us. And so my concern is that going forward, there are a number of high-density developments on the Alamo Pintado corridor, and there's no baseline data to help inform decision makers of what the impacts of traffic, pedestrian, bicycles are on those intersections as a consequence of those developments. There may be mitigation activities that can be undertaken to help offset that. I acknowledge, recognize, and accept the realities of SB 9 and the very hard work and land use redesignations that were done by the GPAC and the staff and everybody else that worked hard on the general plan, the EIR. Don't mean to diminish any of that in what I'm saying. And so I wrote a letter. The response to me was pointed to MOB 1-5 or 1.5, and it's very generic. It does not require assessment of level of service. It just says we're going to provide adequate access and adequate service, and I think 1.6 is adequate safety. How do you assess that if you don't have a baseline? And so I'm urging once again to get a baseline so that those can be assessed. In closing, I've started recruiting people to do a resident traffic counts of that intersection. I'm going to approach the Public Works Director to see if there's any guidance or help that they can give us to make sure that the information we gather could be used or useful to the city. I don't understand the legalities of that, but we would like to do that and provide that information.
Thank you very much. Al Cortese, you're up. Just barely, but you're up.
Members of the council, bad knee. I'd like to seek clarification because I would certainly be in support of both the adoption of the EIR and the housing plan, subject to an early determination of the legal issue that I raised earlier, and a clarification of what might happen to that missing half acre that I saw on the chart that Raphael had put up. He's got 2.5 acres for a redesignation as high density, R20, and then 2.5 acres as low or moderate density, two units per acre. But the lot is 5.48 acres. So is he saving that 0.48 acres to preserve that lone, windswept valley oak at the north end of the knoll on Site C? That's one question. My other question is that there are so many different references to Site C in these documents that I really hope we could get some clarification with respect to when we might expect a decision regarding the legality of the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Unless you want to answer the question.
It's a public hearing, Madam Attorney. Are we allowed to address back and forth?
Generally, we recommend that you just let everyone have their comments, and at the end of the hearing, if there are particular questions that can be easily answered by staff, we can do that at your direction.
Thank you very much. Not right now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this particular subject? I don't see anybody online with a hand raised, so we'll bring it back to the council for last questions, comments. Yes, sir?
Yeah, it was brought up that the lack of benchmarks for the traffic. And I tried to investigate that with the VMT, or vehicle miles traveled,
Right.
and only to find out that it is a software formula that I have no clue as to how it's, whether it's sales tax is or gasoline tax is. So I still don't know where that number comes from. I was given a place to go to find it, but my my resources were limited at the time. Most of my resources of time are limited, but maybe that could help clarify what vehicle miles traveled or would include. Do you have some enlightenment for that?
Yeah, yes, I do actually. So first, I'll take the question about level of service LOS. So as sort of a reminder to our council members and the audience, level of service is no longer a CEQA metric. It was magically whisked away as a part of SB 43, passed back in, don't quote me on this, 2015, and magically disappeared in 2020. So our idea of level of service A, B, C, D, E, and F, that goes away as part of any CEQA document. So so now we do what's called vehicle miles travel is the metric, more so to hit the GHG and air quality targets set up by the state. As far as Site C, that is a project level analysis. So as a part of that project, city staff has requested level of service analysis to be completed, as well as a baseline. That's in our comment letter. That's available on the project website. It's clear as day. And so any sort of Site C questions, those are different project, different time, different project level analysis. This is higher level analyses for the entire city. So it doesn't go into a microscope project by project. I do have Matt Maddox on the line from Rincon Associates, who could hopefully answer the question in regards to the VMT that you're hopefully looking for clarification for. So
The VMT is throughout the mobility
correct
section.
Right. And Matt is much more well-versed in terms of answering the question of how the model is formulated, et cetera.
No, wrong one.
Thank you, Raphael. Good evening, council members. Matt Maddox, Rincon Consultants, Principal of Environmental Planning, and oversaw the preparation of the environmental impact report. To Raphael's point, you're absolutely correct. Vehicle miles traveled is the preferred method of the state and the only requirement in CEQA documents. We are actually not allowed to include level of service. Now, as Raphael pointed out, on a project-by-project basis, the city actually does have a policy to do level of service as part of the analysis. So individual projects like at Site C would and may have to do that kind of level of service. But for the citywide general planning IR, that was not included, nor is it required to be included. Vehicle miles traveled is basically the vehicles or the vehicle's volume per day multiplied by the segment length, an assumed segment length that comes from the model. And that comes from the regional model at the Santa Barbara County Council of Governments. They operate the model on a regional basis. And use a software platform to run various models to generate trips and based on the changes that we are looking at. So the traffic engineering, and we do have Jim Dankovich from DKS on the call as well to answer very specific questions if need be, if we want to go to that level on how the modeling is actually conducted. What is done is the overall growth that's anticipated by the general plan through the model year, through the forecast year out 20 years, is modeled, and basically then we compare the net change from existing conditions as they stand. And that is the basis for how we do a VMT threshold and then make a determination. I think it's important to point out that the analysis showed that while VMT may be slightly improved because of the increased density in the more urban areas of the city, there is a significant unavoidable impact related to VMT. And part of that mitigation looking forward is that individual projects would still have to do their individual analysis until eventually the city actually determines a procedure to have a citywide VMT program that then individual projects could move forward with. Thank you.
So what area does the VMT cover?
What geographic area?
Yeah, the whole city? It's
The
not
entire
area that we're
city as well
discussing.
as the region. Yeah, as well as the region. So the focus is on the city, but it actually is modeling trips that come from other communities outside the county through, and then what the pass-through trip would be.
Okay, so I'm going to have to go back to Raphael here for a second, but hang on, please. On page 228, it says, "The city hereby determines that the project's impacts related to the VMT would be significant and unavoidable."
That's correct. Overall, we are increasing our population as much as we want to infill development. The thing we need to remember is we are very much a tourist community. We import a lot of trips. We also export a lot of trips. So really, the VMT is just, the whole idea in a nutshell is to reduce vehicle miles travel through infill development, get people out of their vehicles or have the ability to make choices of whether to drive or bike or carpool or et cetera, walk, you name it. It's all about choices in terms of reduction of GHG. That is VMT in a nutshell. So no matter what we do, and we mentioned this in the slide deck, there will be impacts, and this is one of them. We recognize that with our proposed general plan and what is proposed, and even though it lays out and it prioritizes mixed-use development, it prioritizes urban infill, it asks for us to reduce those barriers to development, we're still going to go over our VMT threshold.
Yikes. Okay. Other questions?
No, just that every city in California, there's 482 cities in California, are caught between a rock and a hard place when it comes to satisfying the needs of the residents, to complying with the demands of Sacramento. And we vote for these people. So,
okay.
What are you going to do?
All right. I'm a little confused by a couple of things. So let me go back. We've already approved, or had the state approve, the housing element?
Conditionally approved.
Conditionally approved. But it is part of the general plan that we are going to approve tonight?
No, it's not, since it's already been adopted by the council. It was adopted back in
That's what I
December.
thought.
Yeah, so the housing element's not on the table this evening.
But isn't the housing element where the VMT takes place?
No, not necessarily.
It's in the mobility.
Housing element just deals with housing policy over the next 8 years on how you're going to reduce government barriers to produce more housing. That's the housing element in a nutshell.
Wonderful.
That's why I said we have a lot of laundry list of things to do. We either have the option of letting it sit on the shelf or actually do something about it. And
well, the nice thing I've heard you say is that we can change things.
Most certainly can. The housing element would be the one element where if we did change something, we got to take it back to the state, and the state would need to review it all over again and have the fun stuff with that. That's why you normally don't amend a housing element, but a land use element is a different story. A circulation element is a different story. You can amend those, again, with the proper analysis, et cetera. So case in point, project comes in and it's a project that fits economically what we would like for a city. It's a well-designed project, but it doesn't fit the land use designation or zoning. As a part of the application, we could, in theory, amend the general plan, amend certain policies
To allow that to happen.
and to allow for that to happen. And it's very much within your discretion as a part of with a proper analysis that is completed. That would include vehicle miles traveled and other circulation issues as they come about at a project by project basis.
Okay, so I've been reading hundreds of pages of data so that we're just going to approve it. Okay, got that.
No, I mean, again, it sets out, it's a policy document that sort of outlays why you should grow in a certain area or why we should do certain development in a different area. But again, that can change over time. And, as Councilmember Clark mentioned, I can't tell you what Sacramento cooks up in the next, well, I can tell you what they're cooking up this legislative session, but I can't tell you what it's going to be in the next session or the session after that. So, and they're already cooking on things. A great example, I'm going to digress very quickly. I'm just going to make a comment, is there's a fight in the APA, American Planning Association, right now between those of us who are anti wanting to address homelessness issues and shelter spaces in the housing element, because that's really hard to count, versus other groups that want to, and it's a great internal battle. Let me tell you, I got a great email chain about it. But those are battles because, again, it ultimately, in the end, it requires a lot more staff work to get done, and there is no staff time. The cities don't have money, and the staff turn to make it happen, or even how to quantify it. And that's the biggest thing, because they're trying to tie it into housing funds, et cetera. And that's where we come as from city staff, and those of us who look at it as a layperson say, I don't know how you tie those things together. So anyways, I digressed.
All right, so if there's no other questions or comments at this point, Madam Attorney, what would you like to tell us?
First, I just want to, for the record, make sure that we close the public hearing.
We just closed the public hearing. It's official.
Thank you. Okay, so when you are ready to, if there's further deliberation, I understand that Councilmember Arona has a potential conflict that, maybe she could describe for certain properties from tourist-related commercial to, for certain properties that are currently zoned tourist-related commercial that are going to be, land use, their land use designation is going to be changed from tourist-related commercial to public, and her property is close enough to the Mission San Ynez, the property that's going to be changed from agricultural to public and open space, so that she has a potential conflict of interest on those land use designations. So that's one separate vote that we're going to need to take before you adopt the general plan resolution. And then similarly, Councilmember Clark, there's an LSL property that's getting designated from agricultural to open space. I believe you have a conflict of interest with that. This is laid out in section 4 of the general plan adoption resolution. So when you're ready to go forward with motions, the first motion is to adopt resolution number 24-1253 for the CEQA approvals, which is, includes certification of the EIR, the statement of overriding considerations, and the MMRP, and the findings. So that's the first, because we got to do CEQA first. And then at that point, we would ask Member Arona to recuse herself. We would take the vote on the redesignation of the properties that are, that for which she has a conflict for. Councilmember Arona can come back. Councilmember Clark shall recuse. Take the motion on those particular property that he needs to recuse on, and then Councilmember Clark can come back and you can take the motion to adopt the resolution 24-1254. So,
Okay, I got lost. I don't know about the
That's
rest
fine.
of the council.
The remedy is to have council members who don't live in the city.
Yeah.
There's never a conflict of interest. It's wonderful.
All right.
So is there, if there's no further deliberation, I can,
There's no further deliberation. I think we're all done. We need a motion on the first one that all of us can vote on.
Correct. So the motion would be to adopt resolution number 24-1253.
Okay, I'll move that we adopt resolution 24-1253. Can I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Next, we have to ask Ms. Arona to leave.
Yes, so I have a potential conflict of interest since I am a member of Horses Entertainment LLC, which owns the lot at 376 First Street, which you can identify because there's a bunch of trolleys parked there. Yeah. And just so everybody knows, Horse Entertainment LLC also holds a lease of different years at a couple of places at the Hamlet Square on 1618 Copenhagen Drive. So I'll get out of here.
And yeah, so the properties that are there's certain properties going to be zoned from tourist-related commercial to public, and the Mission San Ynez property is going to be changed from agricultural to public or open space as shown in the 2045 general plan. So the next motion would be to redesignate, so it'd be a motion to redesignate certain properties from tourist-related commercial to public and the Mission San Ynez from agricultural to public or agricultural to open space as shown in the 2045 general plan.
You memorize that.
Say you move. I move what you just said. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona, absent. Councilmember.
Recused.
Recused.
Thank you.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
No.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
So motion passes 2-1-0.
No, motion fails.
That fails.
Okay, so the three of you can now discuss if there's a way to redesignate these particular properties that what you would three of you would agree with.
I really think there should be some options for the Mission property. It's a private property, and I know what you've said, and we have some disagreement on some of the facts, and I don't see.
So what would you want?
We could change it in the future, as you say, but then that's a whole nother gyration, if you will, at that point in time.
What would you want to call it?
I think probably the public aspect of it, the public, the blue should be changed either to what it is now, open space, or all of it referred to as TRC.
What do you think, Raphael?
You can go back to the original draft land use map that just had this one square, which was just the church facility. That would be
Correct.
public, and the rest would just be open space as
No.
per the original one. That's currently, it's not. Well, it's currently ag. In the draft, in the April 2023 draft, you had the one square that was just shown as blue.
Page 565.
Yes.
Public.
There
Again,
it is.
understanding your concerns, the problem if we go TRC is we have not analyzed traffic, we haven't analyzed air quality, we haven't analyzed environmental. Those are huge ramifications if you go into the commercial realm and step in the TRC, because the TRC, or excuse the village designation, because we're getting zoning and land use mixed up. So the tourist-related village commercial designation allows for a much broader category of development. And so essentially when you get to the zoning portion, which isn't this evening, which will be in a few weeks,
Right.
we would have to rectify those issues. As proposed in the public zone that was shown to the Planning Commission on July 1st, the development standards for properties that are zoned public. There is no proposed setbacks for front, side, rear. The development height stays at 35 feet. The uses, public meeting facility, quasi-public is a CUP, and it exempts community events and private events from requiring permits, and it will also allow a lot more latitude for those agencies or quasi-public agencies to develop the property through a brand-new permit process known as a development permit, which is a much more streamlined permit. Again,
For that blue overlay
correct,
exclusively,
correct.
not for any of the other property, which
No,
is
because the
undeveloped.
TRC will then, the TRC will now be hamstrung, or not hamstrung, but the TRC will have not only, the TRC will essentially have standards, but it also will introduce what's called an objective design standard. And that objective design standard is proposed to have a old world Europe standard. So
You're in the Mission District, though.
right. And so the uses there, too, are a massive amount of commercial uses. So conversely, we could just keep it as agriculture. We would have to cut a new ag designation. That's what it is today. But again, that doesn't jive with the existing facility today as what is used, because, again, majority of the facility it's a functioning parish, which has its own missions. It has, in terms of just the internal parish workings, in terms of their organizations that go there, such as the Knights of Columbus, the many church functions that are there, besides weddings, baptism, you name it. The public facilities designation, again, is a much broader and provides a much more broader latitude.
I have a question when you're done.
And you're saying that the open space designation, well, what are those limits?
Open space, again, is just designated to be open. And again, as mentioned in the text of the general plan as well as the EIR, is this area is sensitive to cultural, has a massive amount of archaeological cultural sensitivity for development. I don't want to rehash the history of the Mission San Ynez with the Chumash Nation, but there's quite a bit of substantial history between the two. And any type of development in and around that area runs through the same issue in terms of archaeological sensitivity.
That would be true for any designation.
It would be.
But I'm talking about events and so forth. Are there any limitations in that regard?
Not in the open space
with regards
designation,
to
no.
special requirements or other permits?
No,
required?
and that's the great thing about zoning is right now, again, zoning is the nuts and bolts. And these concerns from a zoning standpoint can be solved through policy texts. This is the 50,000 foot level. So while I share your and I shared this with the church groundkeeper this morning, is that, or caretaker, is that this proposal this evening before you provides the church, and I'm going to use parish as a fellow Catholic, this provides the parish a great amount of latitude that with our new proposals that are coming through to streamline and actually codify and provide much more clearer guidelines on how to get things permitted and how to get things done, the public facilities is meant to be a little bit more, have a lot more latitude for the user, because it is just that. It's a public facility. It's a quasi-public facility. It provides the city of Solvang a lot more latitude, what we do with our parking lots and future development, as well as our buildings, as well as the county, the hospital. We're all going to be in the same boat.
I don't mean to be obtuse about this. I'm trying to be forthright with regards to the best. I don't want to take away private property rights in any way for this designation.
And here's the thing about the land use: you're not taking any property rights from a land use designation standpoint, because the land use designation standpoint is the 50,000 foot. The next step is zoning, and even if you rezone a property, you redesignate a property. Let's assume the worst case scenario, that it becomes a non-conforming use. It means it could still operate and still do its thing, whether it's a church, whether it's a single-family home, whether it's a business. If it gets rezoned to a different property, it can always still continually be used as a non-conforming use.
And if I may be recognized by the Mayor and
Please.
Council, just to bolster Raphael's comments, the current designation that the city has on that property is agriculture. most of the uses that we're talking about would not be allowed under that agricultural designation. Taking it to open space recreation opens up more opportunities for activities to occur in that open space area that currently is on that property. And but at the same time, recognizing the environmental constraints on the site, which is cultural, as well as visual resources of that site. So to take the whole property and take it to a TRC designation, we would then be looking at a whole new environmental document in regards to traffic, air quality, as well as visual resources of any type of building that would block the view corridor to the mountains in the valley,
Increase the permitting problems.
as well as the cultural resources portion of it. We think that this is the best solution for that property because it opens up more opportunities without jeopardizing what the community has experienced over 100 years of that property. So
If they had a need for a preschool or something like that, that'd be easier for them to do that under that?
right now, within that blue area, it would be one of the uses, I'm assuming, would be part of the public facilities designation. If you expanded beyond that, it could be that blue can be expanded to take on another project, subject to the environmental review to confirm that there is not a cultural resources impact or some other impact associated with that new proposal that would be coming forward.
Thank you.
I did.
That's all I had. If
Did you want to?
I was going to.
For the city attorney, I am a parish member of the mission, and I wanted to know, I'm too stupid to understand whether what we're voting on affects my church or not. Obviously, I love my church. I want to know if I need to recuse myself, or if something, I still understand, something we're voting on either benefits the mission or doesn't benefit the mission, and if I need to recuse myself.
So, Member Arona recused herself because she had a
Financial interest. Correct.
interest that was conflicted.
And I have no financial interest
Right,
other than
so-
my tithing, but I have
Yeah.
no financial interest, so.
I don't
Then
think
there's no
that,
need to read.
I
Okay.
don't think that rises under FPPC
Right.
regulations. So, but as far as, whether it's going to allow the church to function, I think the goal of the redesignation is to just reflect what's currently happening on the property with as consistent.
Legally.
Have the land use designations reflect the current uses of the property, whereas agriculture doesn't actually reflect what's happening in the building area or the space that's undeveloped. But now, the goal with the designations, and Raphael can correct me if I'm wrong, but is to reflect the fact that here's where the buildings already are. So that's like a public institution-esque type use. And then there's space that's not developed, and that's open space. And to Lori's point, developing, breaking ground on any of that open space for further development would be exceedingly difficult because of the cultural resources that are known to be present there. So designating it as open space, provides for recreational uses above ground, so to speak, but that none of this stops the property owner from submitting a development application later that requests a zoning or general plan amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve the.
Okay, so
resolution.
can we just re-vote on that motion and second, please?
Yes.
So,
If you'll call the roll again, please, Madam Clerk?
We do need to
first.
say the motion in a second again, but we can do the same.
Would you say the motion then?
I can repeat it for the record if that would be helpful.
You know what, for the residents and for people listening, yes.
Okay.
Repeat it for the
So
record.
this is a motion, thank you. This is a motion to designate certain properties from tourist-related commercial to public, and the Mission San Ynez property from agricultural to public or agricultural to open space as shown in the 2045 general plan.
Okay, that'll go into the record much better than I could have done it. That's my motion.
I'll second it. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona, recused. Councilmember Elizabeth Arona, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Excellent. Okay, so now we can bring Claudia back in, and then we have to get rid of Robert?
Been trying to do that for a long time.
That's correct. So we'll just wait for. Yeah. Okay, and so before you leave, Member Clark, if you could state briefly what the nature of your conflict is with the LSL property that's being redesignated from agricultural to open space.
I exist within 500 feet of there.
Thank you. Your residence or property you own exists within 500 feet. Thank you.
Okay, so you want to tell us what our motion is now, Madam Attorney?
Yes, shortly. I'm stalling. So the next motion is to redesignate the LSL property from agricultural to open space as shown in the 2045 general plan.
Okay, then I will move that we reallocate.
Redesignate.
Can't even get it right.
I apologize, Mayor.
Policy.
I know.
Go ahead. Say it, you say it, and then I'll move to say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience tonight. I know this is complicated. You can blame the FPPC for how we have to do this. Okay, so motion to redesignate the LSL property from agricultural to open space as shown in the 2045 general plan.
I move that. Second, please.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Clark recused. Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0-0.
Okay, so we can bring Robert back in.
Yes.
Are we done with 7?
No, we have one more motion.
Oh, yeah.
And on this one, I just want to note that there was a blue folder item. So the only change in the blue folder item was to section, well, I guess there's 2 section 5, so that's a typo. So it should be
7A and 7A2. I'm seeing.
Yeah, so it's the blue folder item 7A2,
Right?
which we'll have to fix one more typo. I apologize. So it should be section, what's the second section 5, which should be section 6. And section 6 is now section 7. And it says the substantive change was the resolution, instead of being effective immediately like most resolutions are, is it's effective 30 days after passage. And so it would be a motion to adopt resolution number 24-1254, fixing those section numbers and
With
making,
the adjustments.
yeah, making it effective 30 days after adoption.
I'll move that we adopt Resolution 24-1254, adopting the Solvang 2045 general plan with the change as noted for the blue folder and taking place in 30 days. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Can I have a vote?
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Wow.
Well, thank you for walking us through that.
Yeah, I appreciate the help. Wow.
Thanks, Ralph.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We're on item 8. If you would introduce that for us, Madam Clerk.
Discussion and possible action to approve the City of Solvang Active Transportation Plan.
Okay. Staff report. Mr. Olds.
In the meantime, I just received an email that they've expanded the evacuation order related to the fire.
To where?
Well, just more, it just made it larger. I don't know exactly what the current boundaries are, but it says the evacuation order is in place for parts of the Figueroa Mountain area as follows. South of Tunnel House at Sisquoc River, east of Figueroa Creek, north of the southern end of Cachuma Mountain, west of Los Padres National Forest areas. Leave the area immediately. The warning has been expanded for Goat Rock, east of Figueroa Creek, north of the U.S. Forest Service entrance at Happy Canyon Road, and south of Cachuma Mountain. So that notice just came through a few minutes ago.
Thank you for letting us know about that. Okay, we're on item 8, staff report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, Mr. Mayor. So this is the staff report for the City of Solvang Active Transportation Plan, which I've been alluding to and hinting about and warning about for some time. We tried to do this plan in alignment with the general plan because, in order to reduce a whole lot of, fatigue for getting public comments and stuff like that. The more public comment you get for a plan like this, the better. So we wanted to, we globbed onto the general plan, and we gathered all the comments that were received for the mobility element for this active transportation plan. So it makes this plan a lot more powerful, and it plays a lot better for certain grant opportunities and whatnot. So what is an active transportation plan? So it establishes a vision for non-motorized, which is active transportation in the city of Solvang. So it doesn't, not motorized scooters or anything like that, but bicycles, hiking, walking, that sort of thing. That is active transportation. This plan proactively works to accomplish some of the general plan mobility element goals already. We're trying to meet the goals that we're trying to establish for the general plan that you're about to approve, the next meeting or whatever, as long as Raphael gets his way. This also improves our future grant opportunities for pedestrian and bike and shared infrastructure. So if we want to build a multi-purpose trail or anything else, there are certain grant opportunities that you need this plan adopted in order to qualify for grants. Also, it guides our future capital improvement plan for city investment of Measure A and other transportation funding. Also, as we condition future developments, we can say, hey, developer, we're going to have a multi-purpose trail along here, and you get to build it. Or you're not next to it, but you know what? We've established some fees that everybody's paying their fair share for these things, so you get to fund it that way. It also establishes consistency for our bikeways and our trails to current bikeway and pedestrian standards, not only statewide, but locally as well. And then it also aligns with other agencies, neighboring agencies, and their plans, and some of their trail network as well. So how do we go about this plan? We provided the plan as an attachment to the staff report. But what we did is we took a look at and established the current bicycle pedestrian facility inventory, which we have some sidewalks in town. We have a lot of neighborhoods that were developed prior to Solvang being a city of Solvang, and there's not a lot of sidewalks. But we do have a few roads with bike lanes. You got Chalk Hill here. You got Fjord. Viborg has some bike lanes, and then you got some bike lanes up Alamo Potato. We do have a big multi-purpose trail that we connect to. It's outside the city, but we're connected to it. And then we do have some. There's a bike way here down Alisal. So we also reviewed the input received from the public from the general in regards to the general plan mobility element. We identified active transportation connectivity gaps. Primarily one being currently you guys approved for us to start working on the design for Freedsburg Canyon. Yeah. So that's there's nothing to connect this. There's a roadway, but no pedestrian facility there. Any barriers or high stress routes versus low traffic stress routes. So if you read through the study, the LTS is it's another 3-letter acronym that is kind of code for everything, but it's we're looking for low traffic stress. Is the idea is, hey, we want to have people to be able to bicycle in their neighborhood. Well, we don't want to put them on Mission Drive. I wouldn't drive, when I had young children, I wouldn't want to have my kid riding alongside me on Mission Drive, although I might be able to get on my bike and function on Mission Drive, or a very avid bicyclist might drive on Mission Drive. So, but you want your low stress road. You want to identify some low stress roads and provide them to the traveling public. And then so there's kind of a graphic here. So the level of stress. So if you're strong and fearless, you can deal with a lot of level of stress. But if you're not really a bicyclist, then you want low stress. You want to ride your bike inside a park or something like that, where you're not going to come into conflict with any vehicles. And then we identified active transportation improvements to improve low-stress connectivity and safety for the traveling public. So can't make everything perfectly safe, but you try to improve the safety. So we came up with a project list that I won't go into. There's I think 15 to 20 different projects in the study, but I'll hit on a couple of the higher points. Friesensburg Canyon Multipurpose Trail is one of them. So here's the map that shows some of our identified projects, potential projects. Friesensburg Canyon Multipurpose Trail, one of them. Mission Drive, an alternative route from our downtown that goes along Mission and then down. There's an existing driveway which we'd have to get some right-of-way from, and then it goes on to city open space. So there's a project that's in our 10-year capital improvement program, which is to widen Mission Drive for Caltrans and provide a bike lane, which is, again, a very high stress. It's widening the shoulder in a bike lane, but that's a very high stress connection, and still not providing any connection from the downtown to Alma Pintado, then ultimately to the multipurpose trail that heads out to the high school. So our thought is this would be, it would be a multi-purpose trail along the road, and then it would leave the road, leave Mission Drive. So it would be off the road. It would be on the sidewalk. It would be a very wide sidewalk, and then kind of leave the road, and then enter the roadway back at the intersection of Alma Tata Mission. So you would be able to get there in a lower stress type environment and connect to our downtown, which would be beneficial. Other projects, the Hans Christian Andersen Multipurpose Trail, that's multipurpose trail through Hans Christian Andersen, connecting Chalk Hill to Mission Drive and then other points. The Sunny Fields to Mission Drive Trail, which I know has been part of other bicycle master plans, but that one's here. It connects to the multipurpose trail. And then there's other additional trails that are outside the city. We incorporated here some of the trail network that's existing. It's on Mission property. There's some state of California property that has some trails. And we incorporated those into this as it's kind of the unofficial trail network, but we're trying to, use this as, and I'll get to kind of the next steps of this, is some like a wayfinding, or to telling people, hey, if you come to Solvang and you want to do some hiking, well, you know what? Hey, there's these trails. There's a trail network that you can get to. So that's some of these other additional trails, and there might be some partnerships that we can develop with, say, the Mission or some of these other interests that maybe we go in on a grant opportunity to develop some of these trails into a little more developed trail. So the next steps, once our active transportation plan is approved, is we utilize this active transportation plan to apply for upcoming grant opportunities. Again, this is required for certain grants. We'll include the project listing into the 2-year and the 10-year CIP. So some of the ones that we want to accomplish relatively soon, we put on our 2-year plan, and then put them in our 10-year plan, which then enables us to put it in a fee update and some of these other things, because it's part of our capital improvement program. And then one of the next steps we would look to do is to develop a citywide trail and bikeway mapping, like kind of a wayfinding for bikes and trails. And then we could also include wayfinding for pedestrians within the downtown and other areas as well. Kind of make that sort of make it a marketing effort as well. And then we would partner with outside agencies and property owners, like Mission St. Inez would be one of them, as if we were to utilize some of their property for formalize some of the informal trails that they have now. We would certainly want to seek their advice and seek a partnership from them. So alternatives and recommendations would be to provide comments to staff and approve this active transportation plan, or you can provide comments and request us to do additional study and come back. And the consultant is the consultant that helped us put this together. Should still be on the line, Jim Damkowitz with DKS, and he was they were the consultant that did the traffic study, the traffic work for our mobility element. So we utilized them because they were, involved with this, and they were along for the ride for the entire. I wasn't along for the entire general plan. It's been going on that long, but him and his firm were. So we wanted to utilize them because they were part of that public outreach, and so we wanted to include that as part of this plan. So that concludes staff's presentation, and I open it up to ask me any questions.
Questions?
Comments?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm so tired, I'm sure a lot of residents are, of me being me. But this, to me, could be a thesis for something written to study government abuse and waste. Because the genesis of this obviously comes from Sacramento. So you've got consultants making money, the state threatening grants if you don't do this, because the plan promotes a more sustainable and equitable community by improving safety, mobility, and access while reducing greenhouse and gas emissions, improving air quality, and supporting public health. Utopian la with an endless money pit, with the state in a $48 billion deficit, cities struggling, and this is what is really, really important to us. I ride 200 miles, 300 miles a week, and I don't have the bike lanes everywhere, and sure, it'd be great to have all this stuff. But consultants make a ton of money. Everybody involved in this is making money. And then the cities are the ones that have to struggle to implement this kind of stuff. This, to me, is really nauseating. So that's my opinion.
All righty then. Anybody else? I would ask one question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I live for this stuff. What? They?
I don't see anything in here that discusses connecting to the Buellton-Solvang bikeway idea that's being proposed for funding by Joan Hartman, primarily.
There is reference to the SB-CAG multipurpose, the San Ynez Valley Bikeway Master Plan. That is I believe that's one of the appendices, but there is reference to that. And then I'll go back here. So this is part of that connection, which is the existing multipurpose trail, which is outside the city.
Right.
So there are a couple. So this is kind of hard to zoom in here, but this is the multipurpose trail portion of. And then through Hans Christian Andersen Park is what is the current proposal.
Yeah, which is goofy.
But also, if it does come into the city, I mean, we're not covering outside the city, so this plan didn't analyze all the different alternatives that they were looking at as far as their grant application.
Okay.
But if you connect here, then it's and Fjord Drive is part of the old circulation element. We'll eventually connect to Mission Drive at Skip Mesa when that development does happen someday. That's the general road configuration, and then that's when that intersection will get developed into some sort of major traffic control item as well. But that would then include a connection. We could, with this plan, we were saying rather than a bike lane, it would be more of a multi-purpose trail.
So
there's a lot of open space on that side on Fjord.
All of your projects then are just within the city, and then you're just saying links to other ones when they get
Yes.
approved or whatever they get.
Yeah. Yes, this is a City of
All right.
Solvang active transportation plan.
Thank you.
I do have another question regarding the figures on how much each trail or improvement or whatever would cost. And I realize that these are estimates based on the time that they were made. It always costs like 2-3 times as much as it was originally or more. Yeah. Is this just like design, staff time, project management, or does it roughly include construction?
This is very high-level plan. It's basically planning level estimates.
Okay.
And it would roughly be about this much based on about how much it's costed in the past. So, and that's mainly for construction. It's not necessarily for wouldn't include design or, even the cost to go get the grant, sort of stuff. So but it's trying to get it within the right order of magnitude.
Yeah.
Say, okay, this is about what it's going to cost and what we might be looking at.
Yeah, I'm all for encouraging more bikes and less cars on the road. And just as a comment, and yeah, some of these seem more feasible than others. It's just really annoying that you have to spend money on consultants every time just to tell you if you can do it or not, and then you have to pay for the design and project management, and then you have to go out for bid for construction. So it's
All to try and get grants.
yeah, well, it's frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, and in order to be in the game, you gotta kind of play their game a little bit. And you gotta have some flowery language and.
It's nice to know that when next time I crash my bike, I'm going to say, darn, low stress connectivity.
And you're saving greenhouse gases too, by the way.
Not when the ambulance comes to pick them up. Roger, 95% of this has to deal with bicycles, and then 5% of it deals with pedestrian traffic. Is there anything here that helps us control pedestrian traffic predominantly across some of our major arteries?
That's not the idea behind this plan, for pedestrian controls. What we're trying to, this is mainly designed when where pedestrians are, where we talk about multi-purpose trails. That's you can get obviously you can get more connectivity with a bicycle, but the multi-purpose trails are for hikers and walkers as well. So that's what we're trying to get to, and we want to make connectivity for people that are walking. But this is not. This does not cover any of the discussion about installing pedestrian controls to keep people from walking indiscriminately out on the roadways or channelize them to the right places.
Tourists.
That's another separate effort.
So what is your ask of us today?
You can either comment on the plan and say I like this, I don't like that, or
Prove it.
yeah, you can approve the plan as is, or you can comment on it and ask us to go back and do some more research and come back with a revised plan.
We haven't gone for public comment. I don't have any slips. Do I have anybody in here? No, not Mr. Beebe. Please, Dennis, come up and talk to us.
Dennis Beebe, Solvang. I want to thank the council for their community service. I didn't get the memo. I didn't see any earlier version of this. Is it online? Can the public look at it? If the council doesn't approve it tonight, can the public look at it?
We can certainly make it available after tonight. It should have been posted online. It's part of the council packet tonight.
That's kind of late. Anyway, okay.
No, but it would be in
So
the
I can
agenda.
go to the agenda and see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on about page, when did it start, 1,000?
1003,
Yeah,
1001 really.
So it starts at 1002.
1,00002. See, there you go. And it finishes up about, where are we
It
now?
finishes up at
11:34.
11:35, I believe.
Yeah,
I had to
35
print
is
out that-
item,
I
yeah,
had to
yeah.
print out that section of the.
You
And made this.
Accidentally hit print on your computer at the office.
All right, no more public comment? Yes, sir, come on up.
Mr. Mayor, council members, once again, my name is Craig Kent, resident of Solvang. Just comment that the plan looks good, that it is not directing traffic down Old Mission Drive and across an intersection that's not controlled by signals, four-way stops, which are not as safe for pedestrians as a signalized intersection. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, sir. Anybody else? I don't see anything on Zoom. All right, so it comes back to the council. Do I have comments?
Zoom.
Or, did I miss something?
Zoom.
Oh, go ahead.
How you doing?
Hank, go ahead. I didn't see your hand up.
How you doing? Council members, Mayor, I just wanted to make a comment quickly on this proposed biking trail. I think it's great that there's discussion about this. I think it would be fantastic for the people that own hotels in town if the Alisal Ranch would open up maybe 20 acres for a mountain bike park. That would bring people that would be very active in biking and would probably spend the weekend here to bike in a place like that, because we really have nothing in Solvang for bikers to do as far as in town. And that's all. I just was wondering if anybody had ever approached the Alisal Ranch about maybe opening up some property over by the wastewater treatment plant for a off-road mountain bike trail or something like that. Thank you.
Good idea.
Thanks. Do we?
I'm sorry, Zaka used to have the course. I don't know why they closed it to the public, because they used to do the high school championships there
Oh, really?
by the Fox and Canyon.
Yeah.
It was a great, great course, and they did it for several years. They had the high school.
Where the fire is right now?
Yeah.
There's a-
Actually, much flatter, much further, closer to the dump.
Okay.
There is
But it was a-
there is a course that Trek has designed at Rancho Alegre.
Yeah, but it's not, oh, at Rancho Alegre?
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Okay.
Thank
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. No, you're fine. Come on up.
Kent Lockhart, Solvang. Just a question, okay? So let's say the trails get built. How are they maintained? Is it Parks and Recreation, or who maintains them and who keeps them clean?
Bike lanes.
You want to talk to that, Roger? It's real quickly.
it in
It's
the
just
document,
basically, it's
or-
a city street maintenance.
Yeah,
Okay.
These are bike
if
lanes.
it's a city facility, be maintained by the city, either Parks or Public Works.
Perfect. They do a great job.
Anybody else? Okay, let's come back to the council for final comments or a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve item 8A.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
No.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
Okay, moving on to item 8B. If you would introduce that, please, Madam Clerk.
Discussion and possible direction to staff regarding RATPD Dev request for a contract amendment to include rate structure modifications and rate increases to operate the Santa Ynez Valley Transit Service.
Staff report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, Mr. Mayor. So in April of, this past April, we brought this item as just to discuss with council our operating contractor for Santa Ynez Valley Transit was requesting a contract modification based on the timing of the contract that they signed and the everything that's gone on and the excessive costs that they're seeing. And we were directed to go back and receive some of their financials, which we have, to confirm what their ask. And so we're presenting this, we're bringing this back to council. And so just to present what our findings are. So again, for the public, as you might recall, so back in 2021, there was a request for proposals advertised for a 5-year contract for operating Santa Ynez Valley Transit. The proposals were received, and in November 2021 and in May of 2022, a 5-year contract was awarded. The contract is based on a revenue hour billing structure, which means that the more hours their drivers are on the road, they bill for that. So that baked into that is all their overhead costs and whatnot. So, as the services go up or down, their billing rate goes up and down regardless of whether, so their overhead costs stay the same. I got some on my So our RATP Dev requested to revise the rate structure to have a fixed rate to cover the non-transit operating costs, the overhead costs, and then a lower variable rate cost to cover the revenue hours for the actual cost of operation. So I did discuss this with one of my colleagues at the City of Santa Maria, who runs Santa Maria Regional Transit, and they did switch to this rate structure, and it's kind of becoming the industry standard. As it just makes sense because of, particularly because of during COVID and other things with the fluctuation where, just because the services just dropped to nothing because people weren't riding because they didn't want to be close to anyone. When those services dropped to nothing, well, there was still cost of keeping the doors open, still cost of, having, there was still some overhead costs. So, and then as it started to ramp up, it took time to recover. So, again, it's becoming more of an industry standard rate structure. We're amenable to that. They were also asked for a billing increase to recover unforeseen escalation in costs, mainly labor rates and drivers with the minimum wages that are, fast food workers are making $20 an hour now. We did ask for a rate comparison, which will be the next slide, of what our other transit agencies paying, other local transit agencies paying. Also, insurance rates have gone through the roof, basically through the recovery of COVID to unforeseen amounts. They were claiming 30 to 40% is what they're seeing for nationwide. They're a national firm. And then high inflationary costs for materials, just anything from, they do maintain the vehicle, so anything from a gasket here or a tire there, all those costs, everything has gone just exceedingly much higher than their allowable increase from year to year, which is at 4%. So the contract increase is as a result, and I'll get to those in a second too. But essentially, using our current numbers would result in about $103,000 increase for fiscal year 24-25, which is a net of 13.5 increase on top of their 4% increase that they're due per the contract. So the labor rate comparison that was provided, one of the big things that's really hurting as far as being able to recruit drivers is the Chumash Casino runs their own kind of private transit agency, and they're starting drivers at $27 an hour. We're currently starting drivers at $19 an hour. So it's really tough to retain, to recruit, and to keep folks. So they're looking at potentially doing an increase up over $20 an hour to start drivers at, and this is just to be competitive. The other transit agencies, Santa Maria is at $21, City of Lompoc is $22, Ventura County $24 an hour. So it's consistent is slightly over $20 is what they're seeing. The requested here's the number, the financials that they shared with us. So they also shared the 21-22 year, which they were not upside down. They cleared about $9,000, but that was under the old contract. So when the new contract started, here's was their realized expenses versus their billing rate increase. So they were underwater about $28,000, not this past fiscal year, the fiscal year before. This past fiscal year is about $40,000 underwater, and it's looking like they're looking at projecting about a $70,000 being in the negative by that much for this next fiscal year, based on what their actual costs are. So again, this slide shows going from, for 24-25, going from rather than just a standard rate, there'd be this would be the variable rate, so it'd be a lesser, $12 different for revenue hour, but then they would have a fixed rate cost, which would cover some of their fixed rate items. which, again, it would be a total projected increase of about 108,000. This, over the next 3 years, it'd be an increase of 103,000, 105,000 over the contract, and then 110,000 for the last year of the contract would be basically what we would realize for that increase. So additional notes is the SYVT's current operational budget is about 1.3 million, and that's for everything, including, we're paying gas, paying our consultants, all the capital projects and everything else that we got going on for, which relates approximately about $30 per rider, based on our ridership. It was asked, we were asked last time how many riders, and we do have that data now, so we did bring it. And then the requested increase is an increase of approximately $2 per rider is what it results. The ridership is increasing, and thus the revenue hours are increasing. They're increasing by about 1.4% annually. So with that, and keeping that portion of it fixed, what we're looking at is, what I'm projecting is not necessarily 108,000, but more closer to about a $99,000 increase is what was being requested based on how it plays out. The state and federal revenues fund our transit operations, so that's a pot. We get our share. We get Buellton's share, and we also get a portion of the county share to fund the San Ynez Valley. So that's our regional apportionment of federal and state monies that we use. So any increase, it's not going to hit the City of Solvang General Fund or any other discretionary funding that we have. And they are, based on the discussion with them, they are agreeable to reassess next year. And if they don't realize the excessive costs that they're looking at, or they just didn't get around to raising their driver's rates or something like that, rather than redo the contract, what they would do is just forego the 3.5% increase, which is what they're asking to redo their rate structure. Currently, it's 4%, but if they get this increase, they're looking at a 3.5% next year, and then 3.5% the year after that. But they would forego that increase if they're looking at if they didn't realize that much of an increase that they're projecting. And then their intent is to get closer to a break even than for the remainder of the contract, rather than show a significant revenue increase or a significant profit. Dominic Perez is here from RATP Dev, and he's certainly able to answer any questions as well. He's our local manager for the office that is currently over on Alma Potato, and hopefully moving them back closer to downtown pretty soon. That concludes my. The next steps is to provide direction to staff, and then if council, let's see, there's nothing to approve tonight, but if you guys say, look, we're amenable to this, it makes sense, then we'll work with the transit team, which is Moore and Associates, and our APT Dev to develop a contract amendment that is consistent with what the numbers that we're discussing. And then our transit team will submit the contract amendment to Caltrans for approval. We got to go through Caltrans in order to approve this because they're basically the overseer of our funding. And then we would, once that's approved, then we would bring the actual contract amendment back to council for approval. So that would be the next time you guys see that. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Brown.
Roger, do we need approval from any of our other partners, Buellton or?
Not at this time.
Okay. How does this contract compare to the when we put it out for bid, this new contract? How's it compare? I'm just trying to keep the playing field level. How's it compare to the bid that did not win? The next closest bid.
The next closest, the last meeting when we discussed this, I had recently reviewed those numbers, but I didn't look at them today. But I seem to recall that they came in, their level of service was not quite as high, but they came in as slightly less. I think it was about 5 or 6% less was their cost proposal. But very likely they would be in the same boat as RATP Dev is now with the general cost of labor and other.
What I don't want other vendors coming to us on a 5-year contract, 2 years into it. And then that's not fair to the original bidder.
Yeah.
All right, that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Okay. I understand.
Any impropriety of that nature. Finally, your estimates are for $100,000 annually for the next 3 years of the contract?
Yeah, the increase of costs of service would be
$300,000 for the contract.
a total of about $300,000.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to say that, me being in the transportation business myself, I am not surprised that this has come up. Yeah. Staffing and insurance and maintenance have gone through the roof the last couple of years. So
I would ask a couple of questions. First off, you're talking $100,000 a year, but then there was no costs from Solvang?
No cost to our general fund or Measure U or any of our other discretionary.
Where does it come from?
So over the past several years, we haven't spent all the money that we received from the transit funding. So we have a pretty robust.
We got extra money.
Yeah, we do have some.
In that particular transportation fund.
We do have some.
It's an
It's got to be
enterprise
spent on
fund.
transit.
Yeah.
Just like for the property across the street, that was transit money that had to be spent on capital, so we were able to spend that on capital. But there is some other, so we have some monies, but the budget that we put together for this, that was included in the budget, we put in as a worst-case scenario. This ask was incorporated into this last year's budget, just so that we didn't have to come back and do a budget adjustment if this was approved. And I think we were in a deficit from our projected revenues by about $30,000 from the projected revenue that we're going to receive. But we have a pretty significant fund balance of transit monies, and then the transit monies do tend to go up every year, so we'll probably be break even or better next year.
So how much of their revenue is based on what they charge the riders?
There's, in the transit industry, there is a goal that we're supposed to meet, that there's a lot of reporting that we got to do that Moore & Associates does, actually. And we're supposed to meet a 10% fare box ratio, which is the ridership, the fees for the ridership is supposed to meet about 10% of the annual costs. But
The annual cost you listed at about 1.3 million, so we're talking 130,000 as the offset from the rider fees?
Yeah, and I don't know if, I think, as I understand it, we've been around 8 to 9% over the past few years. We're getting up, we're getting closer. And I don't know if the fare box is measured against that entire 1.3 million. I think it's because that 1.3 million includes a lot of other.
Well, the one thing that I really like about the San Ynez Valley Transit is they have an on-call for people that it's not just stand on the corner and get your bus. We have an aging population here, and they can call up and get somebody to pick them up and take them out. And so I think this is what they're doing right now. I think is a pretty great service, and particularly since it's not going to cost us anything, at least currently. I like it.
It
Just me.
City of Solvang, their contract with us represents what percent of their overall business?
I couldn't answer that. Perhaps Dominic can come up, he has an idea. But I know they're a pretty big firm. They are also the operator in Santa Maria and I believe in Lompoc as well.
I'm
But
going to the
they're a nationwide firm.
overall worthiness or the financial capacity of the company to accept losses. That's,
I have a rather disappointing answer for you. First of all, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council members, my name is Dominic Perez. As Roger said, oh, Wes, yes. I don't personally have that answer because we are both national and global, but if Wes has an answer, this is the Director of Operations for
My
California.
name is Wes Cruz. I'm the director for the West Region for ITP Dev. We have about 40 clients across the nation right now. So for Solvang, I think your question was what percentage does Solvang?
what percentage of your entire business does Solvang make up as far as your size customer?
Well, Solvang is in the small to medium size facilities for us in operations-wise. So the percentage would be very low when it comes down to Solvang. I would not have that exact figures. I'm not going to sit here and give you a false figure, but it's going to be on the very low end of the scale due to the size of the operation.
And are you having this conversation with other municipalities and customers as well?
Absolutely. As Roger was stating, due to the unforeseen increases that we've had throughout the last few years post-COVID, it was very difficult to assess the exact increases that it was going to provide. Moving forward, we did our best assumptions for 21 going into 22. Unfortunately, our assumptions weren't near correct whatsoever. So we've taken on losses in 23 and a more significant loss in 22 and a more significant loss in 24. And, we let that go by to see if the increases were going to plateau somehow. And for this year is where we've seen some plateau of some form, where we can actually assess more in detail and more accurately what the next few years will look like. And hence why this amendment is required for us to just remain viable in the business. As we mentioned on the last meeting here, we're not looking for profitability here. We're just looking to be made whole. And as Councilwoman Arona said, this transportation business is very difficult nowadays, especially post-COVID, and very difficult to retain employees, quality employees out there. Hence, especially with California raising the minimum wage for food service workers, it's made it more difficult to retain and recruit. And of course, the surrounding cities and counties here have also raised theirs. And as he mentioned, we do have Santa Maria as one of our clients as well, along with Lompoc. And I've had the same discussion with the council and the clients there as well. And again, it's for us just to make us whole, not to be profitable here. We've been losing an excessive amount or excessive amounts for the last couple of years. And all we're asking is for just to get us up to par and be viable in business here.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Then we'll take it out to the public, and let's see if there's anybody that has a comment.
Am I able to be the public?
Yeah, you want to say so? Yes, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, absolutely fine. Again, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council members, Dominic Perez, General Manager for SYVT Transit. Thank you, Roger, for such a fantastic presentation. That really summed up things very well. I wanted to address a concern of any impropriety that was brought up by a council member. This negotiation was prompted by a pandemic, and that's not something that crops up very often. And so just the forecasts that we had budget-wise were, okay, we think we know where we're headed. We think we know what this is going to cost, that's going to cost. And then the pendulum swung much further than we ever thought. And so, like Wes said, we thought that costs would go up a little bit and then maybe settle, and the pendulum would swing back a little bit. But the pendulum has kind of been going in one direction for quite a while. And so now that it seems like the pendulum, though it hasn't swung back, has sort of settled, now we can forecast a little more accurately and present these numbers. And one reason why we want to do this, there's no chance that we would not provide raises to our operators. That is the most important first order of business. And that's just because we're a fantastically safe service. I mean, anytime I get on our nationwide safety calls, this is a shining representation of RATP, and I get to brag about us. It's great. So a big portion of that is retention. if you keep a driver, you've trained them and you keep them around, then they get to know the service better, they get to develop safe driving habits, things like that. They protect each other, they protect fellow motorists, and they protect pedestrians, tourists, things like that. So it serves the city to please help us invest in our operators to keep everyone here safe. And that's our big request, of course, making us whole as well. But that is the biggest proponent of why we want this increase.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate the comments. Okay, nobody else want to make a public comment? I don't think we have anybody online that's looking to make a public comment. Then we'll bring it back to the council. All we are being asked to is approve or give you direction to go start the contract discussions, right?
Yeah, nothing to approve tonight, just is this something that is approvable at a later date once we go the whole route? I didn't want to go to Caltrans and have everything, hey, Caltrans already approved it, you guys got to approve it now. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do this first, make sure you guys were comfortable with it before we go to Caltrans. And then once we get that approved with Caltrans, then we can come back with something that's ready to approve.
So at this point in time, is there anybody on the council that objects to letting them proceed with contract negotiations?
No.
No? Then we're good. Thank you, sir. All right, let's move on to item 8C.
Thanks, guys.
It's at 9:30, I think we have to. Yeah, 9:30 we have to extend it. We got 20 minutes to get through the next 1,000 pages. Item 8C, please, Madam Clerk.
Receive and file report of public records requests January 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2024.
Staff report?
We're bringing this forward excuse me a moment. We're bringing this forward as part of a request or comment from council previous meetings in notating that there have been a number of public records requests that were delving into emails and texts, and so the inquiry came forward as to how many public records requests do we receive in a year, or in this case, we did metrics for 6 months. The types of requests that come forward, the people, if there's some sort of schematic as to the number, the humans, the state, the city, and what departments are being mostly affected by these requests. So we brought forward a spreadsheet, basically, that is a detailing of all the public records requests we've received in the last 6 months. Currently, that is, sorry, didn't even note that. To date, 123 requests, which we're pretty much on track. Prior year was about 280, so we're kind of on track to meet those numbers again. Public records requests, the Public Records Act does not allow for extensions except in precise spelled out government code reasons for extensions, things like needing to confer with an attorney or obtaining records or with another agency, et cetera, and you have to list those. Other than that, you get 10 days to respond. That includes weekends, and so once we get a records response, we're really hustling to try and get those records in time for everyone to review it, city attorney to review in time if necessary, and then get that response out to the public in that 10-day time frame. My goal is always to exceed the Records Act, and at this point we're at 4.5 days average return. And so some of these, just to let you know, some of these requests can be answered within a few hours' time or the same day, depending on staff time and accessibility to the records. Others can take multiple hours and days and sometimes weeks, depending on the volume of the records sought. And so these, primarily the ones that are the longest, are those in the Planning and Building Division. because we have volumes of property records going all the way back to when the city, before the city was incorporated, basically when it was a district. So having to go through those records and determine what is responsive to the requester and determine what is releasable, what is not privileged, et cetera. And it's going through needles and haystacks. And sometimes there is no record, and that can actually take us the longest to discover because it doesn't say we aren't here. So now we're looking at everything to see if we can respond. So with that, we wanted to, again, to bring that this report to your attention and these numbers to your attention so you could get a better grasp at what staff is doing, the types of requests that come in, and our goals to reduce staff time. And part of that goal would be for us to work with other departments and try to digitize these records. Currently, there isn't budgeting forecasted for this endeavor, so until that happens, then we'll continue with this manual process. But we do deliver as many of these records digitally, which has made a large impact on our carbon footprint, and we're happy about that, that almost 100% of our requesters are happy to get them in a digital format. So paper saved, staff time saved. And with that, any questions?
Thank you very much. Questions?
Well, I mean, just a few comments. I see a lot of them are, people that are looking for records of their properties or potential buyers. They want to know what permits there are, what they can do and say. But a lot of these are a significant amount of this is I want to see who is talking to what they said. Makes you feel presidential. I want to see their emails. I think it makes sense to digitalize a lot of these. I don't know if there's a way to make it where people can search themselves so that they can see records, particularly on applications that are currently submitted. I can see how some of these that are, older from, 80s or prior, you do have to dig through the ball to find and see what there is. But is there a way to move forward where you can have these on a database so that people could look for them themselves? And I can understand that it's frustrating. I look for items on the agenda myself, and it takes me a while to find them, but it seems to me like it might be worthwhile to invest in software to, save staff time.
We're proponents of it. It's just, it hasn't been a priority for council. I think maybe they were unaware that that this is available on a self-service basis if we can create that. But it's what we found in prior projects is garbage in, garbage out. And so it really takes a knowledgeable person to review the file first and determine what is a record before scanning it. Versus scanning 1,000 pages and maybe 50 of it is relevant, and the other pages are just somebody's notes, somebody's drafts, and so part of the cost of this would be to determine what staff member could actually be involved that would have the knowledge to go through it first, and then invest in the scanning project itself. We did have a scanning project that was previously done. It did not go through that process of having it be cleared out, the file cleared out before it was scanned. So we ended up with thousands of pages of things that when somebody wants something on an address, we just have to look through every single page, and it's not sorted out in any manner. So the software is probably the last step. The first step is determining, what we need to scan, and then we can do that.
I think my biggest concern is not the cost of the changeovers, the existing cost that it's costing our staff now for lack of a better word, abuse of the privilege.
It is abused, big time.
In looking through your spreadsheet, there was one individual that made 31 requests in the last 6 months, which is over 1.3 a week in request. So it's the abuse of use of time, and it looks like it's really just a personal vendetta.
I want to know what they do for a living. I want to have that kind of free time.
Maybe this is their living, I don't know. But if I were to include staff time, maybe even at 2 hours per request, and attorney's fees for a half hour for that same request,
More than that.
and then add up all that, it's well over, 10,000, 20,000 a year. So that's very conservative. So, and at that rate, it's just, like I said, abusive. So I don't know what to do about that aspect of it. Is it a privilege to have these available? And it's a civic right.
I think
But,
that the attorney would speak to that.
It's a privilege granted by the Public Records Act. So at this point, it's a right for them to have access to the documents as long as they're not exempt under the act.
I'm just wondering if there's any way to have a cost, like we pay for, if I want a building permit, I have to pay for the builder's, the administration time for that.
Yeah, under the Public Records Act, you can't charge for staff time to.
So the
the
abusive
request.
aspect is something that we just have to live with?
Yes, the legislature has decided that the public policy of allowing access to public records outweighs those other considerations.
That's unfortunate.
I think we're aware that the law allows a lot of
Yeah, well.
waste of taxpayer money. We've seen that through the whole
But
meeting.
This has been a big waste of.
Can we not do it electronically and do it by paper and charge for the cost of printing?
Yes, go ahead.
It's more expensive for us. Maximum we can charge is, right now, is 10 cents a page. And in order to really be at a rate
Take
any higher
hours
than that,
of-
we'd have to do a study, and it would be the life expectancy of the printer times the paper times the printer ink,
Okay.
and then staff.
Sorry, I thought about it.
I have another one, and I wasn't aware of this. In the construction industry, there's, for example, there's something called a green sheet, where, say in Los Angeles, a contractor in Tarzana will purchase a green sheet, which will give him all the permits pulled in the last month in a certain area. And then he looks at the ones that his trade could bid on, and he calls whoever that general contractor, that owner is, and that's how these guys get jobs in bigger cities and so on. So I didn't realize that there's this company from Cedar City, Utah, that's asking for all of our building permits from May to June. They're compiling all that and then selling it to people. And that to me is like, I didn't realize this is how they did that. When I was first selling lumber to builders back 35 years ago, I would go to a city hall. They have on the planning department a pad of a photocopy, not photocopy, like an 8-part, copies, and I would just look through the ones that were, this guy's buying lumber, and I'd call the guy. But this is what contractors do. They subscribe to these publications, but I didn't know that people were getting all this information for free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing to consider is a lot of cities have which is kind of what Anne Marie was alluding to, a lot of cities have a public portal where a lot of these documents are just available, in an organized fashion, so they can look it up by property number, address, what have you. And that, if we do that, then staff can direct people there rather than having to continually produce documents. So that's another, it's ultimately, I think, the goal avenue for.
Unfortunately, the abuse
staff
that
time.
Councilmember Clark was referring to is not something I'm Brown, sorry. That's Clark.
We're all abused.
Is not something you could look up like that.
Correct.
No.
Right.
Because she's asking for who said what to whom and all this kind of.
That's really interesting, to a council messenger's comments or communications with a specific resident. It just seems so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's a public record.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I guess, just to reiterate, 31 of the requests of the 123 that we received was one individual, and that represents 25.2% of the total. I think that's abusive, so.
But we can't.
But thank you for the data. I appreciate the study.
Yes, sir.
I was going to point out, we intend to bring this forward on a quarterly basis, in the future, unless council doesn't want to see that, but I think, and there's an interest, I believe, perceived there to be an interest. So rather than, just on a quarterly basis, we'll bring it forward.
So are the proposal is to bring a report similar to the one that we're seeing tonight on a quarterly basis?
Yeah, we summarize it on a quarterly basis. It would be in consent.
Oh, okay. I thought I misunderstood it. I thought it was talking about answering public records requests on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, no. But basically, this report, what you see is 2 quarters of, 6 months worth of the year. So sometime in October's council agenda, there would be the July to September summary of the public records request.
Yeah, I'd like to see those.
And go
Yeah.
on like that.
Yeah.
I think we all,
I think it'd be nice to be in the agenda packet
Yep.
and known in the community.
Okay.
we all agree.
Good point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so public comment? No. Okay, nobody's on Zoom that wants to make a comment. We'll bring it back, and the action is to approve that.
Receive and file.
Receive and file, sorry.
Please.
Thank you very much. We will receive and file.
No, it needs a motion.
Oh, we need a motion to receive and file?
If it was on consent, it would be part of the consent calendar.
I'll move that we approve the item 8C as a receive and file.
Second it.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
excuse me. Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes,
Motion passes 4-0.
thank you. Let's move on to item 8D, please. If you'd introduce that to us.
Discussion and possible action to approve updated city council protocols to conform with regulatory requirements and make other conforming edits.
Staff report?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this is, city staff is currently going through a general process of updating city policies. Most of them are, at the staff level, but since the city council protocols is something that governs you all, we brought this before you, and again, we're making some conforming edits. We checked, make sure it was consistent with current law, caught some typos, reorganized some things to make things clearer. And you can see there's a kind of a track changes legislative version that shows you the edits that we're proposing. So we're here to answer, Anna Marie and I are here to answer any questions that you have on any of our recommended changes.
Okay. Questions?
I do have a question on the one regarding nepotism, because there was a discussion several years ago about how, a previous council thought to put it in there because they thought it was relevant. But then there were discussions about how these being such a small town, that having a rule like that would limit who can serve on, commissions, on boards.
Oh, yeah,
And I
forgot about
thought we had done away with that.
I remember looking through those minutes from that meeting, and it was a conversation, but there wasn't, actually, it was Councilmember Clark that brought up that he didn't see the value of having that in there, but the council did not make a motion to have it removed.
From the legal perspective, I would encourage you to keep it in.
Can we violate a code if we all agree to it?
Okay, so first of all, this is not the code, so this isn't, an ordinance that's in our municipal code. This is a policy.
An
and
ordinance,
Therefore, yeah, there's no city council policy police other than yourselves.
So we can, okay.
But I would say it's not a great look to violate your own policies on purpose. So that's why we're bringing it to you, because we want you to be comfortable with what's in there. I do recommend that you not promote nepotism. I know that it is a small town. However, I'm trying to find do you have the provision? 117. Eight, nepotism. I think I'm in the. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's fairly narrow, and it's only affecting, it wouldn't like impact, two family members getting elected and serving on the council. It's just who you're appointing. Like, you can't appoint your wife or your son to like the planning commission or something like that.
Okay, but could I, for example, appoint Mr. Mayor's wife to a commission?
Any person, I'm reading it again, any person who is relative.
Yeah, because the way that I read it, it understands that we cannot appoint anybody else's family member
Our family, but you're saying appoint somebody else.
who is related to any of us.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the way it reads.
so we can do that. My wife doesn't want the position.
And this is.
Yeah, I mean, none of my family is dying to sit up here, mind you, but
And this is specific to council and the city manager. The Teamsters, the MOU we have with the Teamsters did update this language so as to avoid concern that you're referencing. So it's not applicable to the hourly staff, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then. Public comment? Nah. We'll bring it back to the council. Final comments or a motion to approve the updated city council protocols?
I'll move to approve the updated protocols, item 8D.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, we're at that time of the evening where we have to all agree to keep on keeping on.
I'll make a motion to continue the meeting after 9:30.
I'll second. Roll call.
Councilmember Clark.
No.
I think it says unanimous.
He loves doing that.
When you're simple, it's also entertaining.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
How are you going to vote no on your own motion? Yes.
I can forget an epiphany, okay? So what do you know?
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
Okay, item 8E, I believe, is where we are.
And discussion and possible action to reaffirm the City Council legislative priorities 2021 platform and make other conforming edits.
Staff report.
Yes, good evening. So this is just basically reaffirming the legislative platform that was adopted by the prior council. Essentially, having a platform allows a more immediate response. Sometimes we get a notice from the League of Cities in particular to support or oppose legislation that's on the floor in Sacramento. And the time requirement does not allow for it to be heard at a council meeting prior to needing to get something in a letter form to Sacramento. So the platform as it currently stands would allow the mayor or the mayor pro tem in that order, and then the city manager, if either of those two were not available, to be able to basically sign a letter and then send it off. So this is just, the platform did not change. This is consistent with the League of Cities recommendations. And if something comes up that is not on, they want to name every Tuesday the governor's day or something, it's not on a platform, then it would not be allowed to be signed, but it would be something specific identified in the platform that then would allow more immediate response and to, again, oppose or support various legislation in Sacramento. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Anybody can pick up what he just said?
Yay, local control.
Yeah. Okay, so actually, in this particular case, you're saying, it says discussion and possible action to reaffirm, but what's possible action to reaffirm? There's no approval?
Well, that's what reaffirm means.
Oh, it doesn't say approve it.
Approve it.
We're recommending a few, reorganization stylistic changes, but in addition to that, if you had changes to the actual priorities and direction for, staff to respond to, like what Randy was just talking about, requests for positions on legislative items.
Okay.
We could implement those additional changes, and we'd have to bring that back for, we'd have to go and implement that and then bring it back for your approval, so.
I'm sorry. It's how council reacts to legislative direction?
So this provides, basically you all are establishing a framework of saying, this is what we have determined is our policy position on X, Y, and Z things. If staff receives a request from Cal Cities or any other organization to take a position on a piece of legislation at Sacramento, then staff already knows what your position is on that issue and can, go forth and say, here's what the city of Solvang thinks about this issue. If it's something that is not within the scope of this, of what is laid out here, then they have to come to council for approval. They can't just, come up with a position. But this lays out the groundwork for, okay, here's what we think about X, Y, and Z, and then that gives staff the flexibility to respond timely on those issues that you've laid out. But, this is what the prior council came up with. If you guys are, if the council is supportive of that, we can just adopt, with our recommended edits, those same priorities and policy positions. But if you have other priorities and policy positions you'd like to amend or add to or delete, we can make those changes before we finalize.
I do have one question. Okay, there's 482 cities, municipalities in California. Do we know roughly how many of these cities belong to League of California Cities? I know, I'm expected to.
Yeah,
Most
not
of
all,
them?
certainly, but most of them. I'd say
Yeah.
Great
probably 85
majority.
90%.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Thank
It's
you.
actually 483. It's Mountain House, I think, was just named the 483rd city recently.
Those two guys.
I had a quick question. Is there an imminent time situation here that has to be done within a certain week? Or you were saying if something comes up in Sacramento, we need it.
Well, right. So in a legislative session, I'll just pick one of these. On unemployment compensation, oppose legislation that would increase employer liability for unemployment or that would reduce local discretion over the hiring and retention of employees. Sacramento says we want to mandate that you have to hire certain people and not have the local discretion. We know that the city would say, because we oppose that, we would send a letter saying, City of Solvang opposes it, and again, either get the mayor pro tem, and in the absence of either of you, then the city manager would sign that and send it off. We get letters or requests from Dave Molinex is our contact.
Yeah.
And we get letters or requests from him, I don't know, in my 15 months now, probably 6 or 8 times has been like, I need a letter like right away.
Yeah.
And, one of them was that whole CBRT thing that was just recently decided by the state Supreme Court to not allow it on the ballot in November, but it was asking for letters of opposition to that measure or support fighting it or whatever the specific ask was. We had time for that one to come to council and get the consensus to go ahead and sign and send that letter in. But sometimes they don't. This is an item before a committee or maybe it's something that passed through and we want the governor to not sign it, to veto. And so those letters come in, we need it right away. So because of the lead time associated with Brown Act bodies and things, we would, we're looking, it gives us an additional tool to be able to help support or oppose the legislation.
But as far as like updating the policy now, I mean, this is effective currently, so we're just going to replace it with a new one. So if you wanted time to consider, amending the legislative priorities, we could do, like, there's not that.
And that's
There's
what
no rush,
I was
no,
going
I
to
mean-
propose that we table this because I'll be honest with you, I've not read all these details.
But I have to say, this is kind of funny because the governor proposes something, the legislature and the Senate rubber stamp it with a supermajority, and then Solvang says no. And they're like, whatever. So,
Well, but if-
the whole thing's kind of moved.
But if enough Solvang oppose it, it may get
And that's
the
going to
governor to
happen?
think twice.
I understand the process, though. Yes, I get it.
Well, again, I'd move to table this to a future meeting, allowing us a little more time to go through these protocols.
That's your motion?
It is.
Do I have a second?
Okay, I'll second it.
Oh, we haven't gone through public comment. Is anybody
Yeah.
out there who wants to talk about this?
Yeah, we should do both.
No. Okay. Okay, it's back here. We have a motion and to table this and bring it back another time, and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
No.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
No.
Okay, well, then I will make a motion to approve the legislative platform as presented.
And I'll second it.
Just real quickly, obviously, if there's something in here that you would like to change or modify, let us know, and we can bring it back for future discussion.
Well, that's what he asked for.
It's not a resolution. This is not.
Well, no, but I'm just saying that there might be something in here that you go, wait a minute, I don't agree with that, and that we can bring it back for subsequent discussion.
After we've approved what you have
Right.
now.
So, I mean,
It's not set in stone.
no.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second, I believe.
Very briefly, might be marked the idiot that decided to bring this forward, but this was something that had been approved in 2021 as part of preparing for the election and preparing for a potential new council. I wanted this to be on record of what the policy is that was adopted, and pretty much put everybody on notice that this is, candidates, people who are running, to kind of bring them up to speed as to this is what our position is as a body. And the reaffirmation was really just to bring it up and make you all aware, since some of you weren't present when it was first adopted. But Chelsea also brought in some of her edits that were more conforming to legislative changes. So what we're doing tonight is it already exists. Reaffirming it just kind of lets it be in the public realm and be exposed once again. But it's not anything, as you said, that's hard, fast. We have to do it tonight. I just really wanted it as an effort to make it public.
Thank you. I think probably what I would do is we could move forward on this and we can bring up amendments to it in the future. Is
Yeah.
what I thought we could rather make it a two-step type of thing, but I understand. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second, I believe.
Okay. So is this to then affirm it? Motion and a
Yes,
second?
yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, let's move to item 8F. If you'd introduce that, please.
Discussion Discussion and possible direction to staff regarding Solvang's camping ordinance in light of the recent Supreme Court of the United States SCOTUS decision.
Staff report.
Yes, thank you. So June 28th, Supreme Court reversed and remanded the previous Ninth Circuit Court's decisions related to cities of Boise and Grants Pass and their ordinances to regulate camping, determining that it was not cruel and unusual punishment to regulate where and when camping can occur on public property. So in an effort to be compliant with those rulings, this council approved on October 9th ordinance 230369 to try and regulate the camping that was happening. And as we know, the sheriff's department just determined that they could not enforce it. So now that the Supreme Court has overturned the Boise and Grants Pass decisions, or reversed and remanded, I guess technically,
Reversed and remanded the Ninth Circuit Grants Pass decision, but in doing that, what would I say? I would say that they, I'm trying to think of the right word. Invalidated, that's the word I'm looking for, thanks. They invalidated the Martin versus Boise decision as well.
right? So since our current ordinance allows camping for 24 hours, I thought it best to bring this whole matter back to council to get direction. We're not looking to change anything just yet, but to get direction from you to investigate our options related to how the ordinance is currently written, and then also suggest that we collaborate with the sheriff's department to come up with a way we can better enforce camping in the city limits on public property. So looking for some direction and ready to answer any questions.
Questions?
Yes, we'll go right ahead.
I want to see, it really doesn't matter if we can't get somebody to enforce it. So, and I don't think it was the sheriff's department. I think it was more the district attorney's office that.
County council recommended.
Okay. So, but this is our ordinance. We hire the sheriff to enforce the laws that we pass, including what they do in the county. So I think it's incumbent upon them to help with that enforcement, if that's what we're paying for. And I didn't see any. We went through a lot of pain getting to this ordinance, and I think it's well written, and I think it still meets the threshold of what the Supreme Court wanted.
The ordinance currently allows camping for up to 24 hours in one place. Because the Supreme Court invalidated the Boise decision, we could come back with what we had before, which is camping is not allowed in public spaces. So Chelsea has a comment.
Yeah, just to put a little finer point on it. So the Ninth Circuit decision that got overturned and the Boise decision, basically they said it kind of came down to you had to determine whether somebody was involuntarily homeless or not based on whether there were enough shelter beds available for the people who were trying to sleep in camp in the public space. Because of the Supreme Court decision, we don't have to try to do that. We don't have to jump through those hoops to enforce an anti-camping ordinance anymore. So that we're hoping when we talk to the sheriff's department that will provide them some comfort to enforce our ordinance. Currently, the ordinance does have language about what to do for involuntary people who are determined to be involuntarily homeless. Future edits probably could include taking out that type of terminology and making the rules consistent we wouldn't, because we don't need to distinguish between those people who are involuntarily homeless and just want to be out there and not taking shelter services. So that's kind of one direction we could take it. There are still going to be other constitutional limitations on enforcing any sort of anti-camping ordinance. Those were in place before the Grants Pass and Martin's decision. We have to write a law, for example, that's not unconstitutionally vague and it's very clear so people know how to follow it. And there's like case law from the 90s that talk about there's a necessity defense for someone who is homeless if they can, to say that, oh, you charged me or cited me for sleeping in violation of the anti-camping ordinance, but that was my only option. But there's certain elements they have to prove for that defense to happen, but it's a lot higher of a bar than what was under the Grants Pass decision. So I say that our ordinance was designed to deal with the particular boundaries that the Martin versus Boise and Grants Pass versus Johnson decisions had laid out. We don't need to follow those restrictions anymore based on this Supreme Court decision. So we can kind of walk some of that back, but we still need to be mindful of, these other pieces of the law, because it didn't just say wholesale you can, it's not it specifically reverses those two decisions. I should say that's the way to put it. Yeah.
Mr. Clark, did you want to make a comment?
Just that 30% of the nation's, in a nation of 300 and something million people, 30% of the nation's homeless population lives in California. If you build it, they will come.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, the ordinance was written from a humane perspective. Obviously, you don't want to punish somebody if the only place that they have to sleep is on the Greenbelt, on Mission Drive. But on the other hand, you don't want to encourage people camping out in the public right away. So I do wonder if we can look back on this and say that there are certain areas that are zero tolerance, because certain areas have become problematic. There seems to be an effort on using the downtown area as storage space at times. And I've seen individuals that, camp out because they don't have anywhere else to go, but there's other people that seem to be camping or attempting to camp downtown for the sake out of convenience. And this is something that is addressing a need, not somebody's, convenience. So I think we should look back at it and see if we can still address homelessness in a humane way, but we are not encouraging, behaviors that are, harmful to the residents at large.
As I recall, what we heard from the sheriff's department was they had asked those homeless here in town if they wanted to move into a quarters in Lompoc, who has the facilities, and they said no. And now, if we go back to the anti-camping ordinance, we can say you can move there, or you can move someplace else, but you can't stay here, right?
Right.
So, public comment. Boy, the public is getting really small. I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody on Zoom. We'll bring it back here. Last comments, questions, or a motion? Oh, we're giving his direction to go back?
So, yeah, looking for direction to investigate and work with legal and well as the sheriff's department, possibly the DA's office, to come up with an ordinance to replace the one that's currently in place.
Okay. Do we just need to agree, or do we need a motion for that?
I'd like you to use this, all you can of what we have, and just modify it as needed for enforcement.
What we have allows camping for 24 hours.
Well, and if that's indeed something we don't want,
Right.
then we can take that out. I'm just saying that if we can't get it enforced, it doesn't matter what we say.
Well, we can get it enforced now, that's the whole
Well, that's
thing.
important.
So what we need to do is take it back to staff and let them negotiate, as you said, with the sheriff and the legal, and necessary, DA if necessary, to come up with something. So do you need a motion for that, or just all of us say we agree?
If you want to do a motion, that's fine, but we don't need a formal motion. If you kind of want to poll or.
Does anybody disagree with having that go back and negotiate that, change that contract back, or that code back? We all agree.
Okay, thank you.
You have your marching orders. Randy, thank you, sir. Last chance for council comments. Anybody want to make any comments?
Yeah.
In that case, we are adjourned at 9:52.